Chapter 207. Inside the 100 Birds Hall, inside the giant skeleton wrapped in red curses, a black-haired youth calmly looked at the three girls silently. Under his gaze, Nua Iyer, Xia Luot, and Ai Lizi were all stunned. The three girls looked at each other, and the scene fell into silence. Luoya looked at the three girls holding weapons and couldn't help but sigh. To be honest, Luoya still didn't understand the situation. From his perspective, before Ai Lizi finished exhaling in his ear, the door of the room flew open, and then the glass bottle containing the golden soul shattered. The golden liquid directly surrounded him, and after that, he could only rely on his curses to sense the situation. Although he couldn't see or hear, Luoya's curses were still quite good. Of course, another reason was that the three people outside were really lively. Whether it was Nua Iyer and Xia Luot's angry attacks, or the three people's fighting after that, everything in Luoya's perception was like a giant firework exploding beside him. In a trance, the black-haired youth felt like he was sitting on a mountain of firecrackers in a fireworks factory. He didn't know what to do as he felt the nearby mountains shaking. They're fighting? When this fact was reflected in Luoya's mind, the black-haired youth's first reaction was to not believe it. How is this possible? Who are the people here? Nua Iyer, the princess of the Papal Kingdom, the future leader of the Vatican; Xia Luot, the eldest daughter of Rose, the successor of Sorofia; Ai Lizi, the eldest daughter of the Akot family. No matter how you look at it, this lineup basically represented the top nobles in this world. As the representatives of noble ladies, they should be elegant, virtuous, and courteous. Even if they were angry, they should be careful to show the magnanimity of nobles. How could they fight like shrews? Thinking this, Luoya shook his head. He felt that something might have gone wrong. For example, the golden soul amplified the fluctuations of the curses. But as time passed, when he felt the physical shaking of the earth, the black-haired youth's face changed a little. Forget about the curses, the shaking of the earth couldn't be fake, right? What did the three ladies do to shake the earth? Luoya didn't know the answer to this question, but he knew that this was definitely not something that could be caused by a calm conversation. In a hurry, Luoya decisively decided to make a move. When he circulated his curses, he suddenly found the channel with the Gulan Daer reconnected. Luoya sighed at Ai Lizi's great healing pill. At the same time, had the courage to suppress the signs of a full-scale conflict. Luoya's goal of the Gulan Daer had achieved his goal. Tell me, what do you want to do? In the room, the black-haired youth patted the dust off his body and looked at the three stunned ladies from the huge skeleton. Recalling the scene just now, he couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. The attack of the three ladies just now was no joke. If the Gulan Daer didn't break the collision of the curses, the 100 Birds Hall would have collapsed. More importantly, if there was a big movement, the matter of the princess of the theocracy, Miss Rosetta, and the young lady of the Akate family fighting would be completely exposed. Having a bad relationship in private and having a falling out in public were two different things, let alone rolling up their sleeves and fighting. No matter what the reason was, this matter would become a stain on the three ladies. Under Luoya's questioning, the three ladies gradually calmed down. They looked at each other and thought of the possible impact of this matter. For a moment they all fell silent. You Nua Iyer Heathcrit represent the theocracy and the Holy See. You, Xia Luot Sorofia, represent Rosetta and Sorofia. You, Ai Lizi Akate, represent the Akate family, me and my father. Do you think the three of you can fight? The black-haired youth pointed at the ladies who made a big mistake one by one, and criticized their almost brainless behavior. Under Luoya's angry rebuke, Nua Iyer looked away. Xia Luot lowered her head, and Ai Lizi directly wiped her eyes and cried. Because sob, I finally have time to be intimate with my big brother, but they're bothering me again, sob. Ai Lizi choked out her dissatisfaction. Her pitiful look made Luoya's heart ache. He wanted to rush over and hug her immediately, but now that all three of them were present, Luoya could only suppress his thoughts. He thought for a moment, sighed, and softened his tone a little. No matter what the reason is, the relationship between the three of you shouldn't be like this. Fighting is too much, not to mention a fight with such a big commotion. The high-level extraordinary Rosetta must have sensed your fight just now. My father and the others will probably rush over soon. What do you plan to say? Luoya's question was like a sharp knife stabbing into the hearts of the three impulsive ladies. Not to mention Xia Luot and Ai Lizi, whose fathers were about to arrive. Even Nua Ayer's face turned a little pale. This, if you say it's a fight, it doesn't seem right. I'm afraid my father and the others won't believe it. Nonsense, the three of you are fighting in front of my sick bed? It would be strange if they would believe it. Luoya complained in his heart. He turned to look at the messy surroundings and the servants and guards who rushed over to look at them from the door. Luoya didn't want too many witnesses, so he decisively dispersed the crowd. Then he looked at the three girls and smiled bitterly. He felt a headache coming on. Before their parents arrived, Luoya said that he would help the three girls no matter what. Otherwise, if it really caused a conflict between the higher-ups, Luoya wouldn't be able to absolve himself from the blame. Moreover, the great impact on the future would cause Luoya's originally useless plot prediction to completely collapse. Gulandair, it seems that I can only let you be the scapegoat. Use my power to cover the traces of the curse power. After thinking for a long time, Luoya apologetically apologized to the giant skeleton. Gulandair readily agreed. A gust of red wind blew by, and everything in the room began to become undead. This should be enough, right? Luoya looked around and nodded as he muttered to himself. Just as he was about to thank Gulandair, he suddenly felt something sweet in his throat. The next second, he directly coughed out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 208. In the steamy bathroom, Luoya Akat leaned against the edge of the pool, looking up at the gorgeous chandelier above his head in a daze. After a long time, the black-haired youth exhaled and looked down helplessly. Okay, my little brother hasn't rested yet. I'll continue to soak. Sigh. With a helpless sigh, Luoya scooped up a handful of cold water and washed his face, hoping to cool down his overheated brain, but the truth was that it didn't have much effect. Actually, Roha couldn't feel much of the outside world's temperature right now. The excessive amount of life energy was running all over his body, making him feel as uncomfortable as if he ate 200 kidneys and drank 100 pounds of ginseng wine. Looking at his pale pink body that was like a freshly cooked crab, Luoya couldn't help but recall the chaos an hour ago. An hour ago, in order to get rid of the side effects of his life exhaustion, Luoya and Ai Lizi performed a special treatment. According to Master Andrew's recommendation, they used the body fluid method, but strangely, during the treatment process, the body fluid method that should have been clearly controllable went wrong, causing a serious excess of life energy. Originally, Luoya wanted to collect Ai Lizi's tears, but because of her firm opposition, the two changed to a rather ambiguous method of feeding each other wine, but this method inexplicably overdosed. Until now, Luoya still didn't understand why a few mouthfuls of wine with a trace of saliva could make him like this. After a long time, he could only attribute it to Ai Lizi's life energy, and the Pamela wine having an unknown reaction that strengthened the effect. But just like how most people didn't care about the cause of the incident, when the door was blown open, Nua Ayer and Xia Luo didn't care about how Luoya's situation became like this. They only cared about one thing, and that was Ai Lizi riding on top of him. The two of them looked like they were in a delirious state. Although he inexplicably felt that the girls didn't want him to be too sober after seeing his appearance, and they didn't seem too happy when the servants gave him an ice pack. At that time, he didn't have time to think about why, because there were more troublesome things waiting for him. More than 10 minutes after the three girls started fighting, Kadia and Bruce came together, followed by Andrew and a group of important figures. The two fathers looked at the door stuck in the roof, and then looked at the traces of the Gulandair's broken roof above Luoya. They couldn't help but look at each other. Obviously, Luoya's intervention had an effect. The appearance of the Gulandair had disrupted the situation, and the group of high-level extraordinaires couldn't quite understand what was going on. While everyone was confused, Luoya decisively took the initiative to take the blame. Father, Uncle Bruce, after I recovered from my injuries, I had too much vitality, and I didn't control my curse power well, so I went berserk. Fortunately, Ai Lizi, Nua Ayer, and Xia Luo were there to stop me. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. The black-haired young man said so with an apologetic expression, which stunned Kadia and Bruce. The two fathers looked at each other, then looked at the three girls who had stiff expressions on their faces with a strange expression. They had almost guessed the truth without saying a word. All right, the child has really grown up. She even knows how to steal other people's men. Such thoughts surged in their minds, and the fathers sighed with emotion. Bruce looked at Luoya, who had an apologetic smile on his face, and immediately understood the black-haired young man's intention. Luoya was trying to find a way out for the relationship between the three parties. For this reason, he even destroyed the scene and took the blame himself. It had to be said that it was really rare for someone at his age to be so considerate. After understanding Luoya's painstaking efforts, Bruce naturally wouldn't pursue the matter and fully cooperated with him. I see. This is really an unfortunate accident, but fortunately, it's more daunting than dangerous. With this sentence as the beginning, the president directly classified this incident as an accident. In the face of Luoya's self-blame, Bruce enthusiastically stepped forward, held his hand, and comforted him with a smile. What kind of person was Luoya? At least at this stage, he was a patient. He was a patient after all. No matter what happened to a patient, it wasn't his own subjective behavior, so he shouldn't be blamed. Wasn't it just a broken roof? How could this be called an accident? Bruce was indeed worthy of being the head of a business family. His speech was very cordial and enthusiastic. Whether it was Kadia or Luoya, both of them felt very comfortable listening to it. For a moment, the atmosphere in the room became harmonious, and the group of strong people who came along with him also went along with the flow. After a show of mutual understanding and harmony, Luoya, who couldn't support his life energy after completing the mission, was sent to the bathroom to soak in a cold bath. After completing the mission and settling the matter, Luoya was slightly sober under physical therapy. Now it was time for Luoya to consider some things. Gulandair, are you there? I'm here. A dull and somewhat hoarse male voice echoed in his ears. The phantom of a huge skeleton formed an image with curse power as a pen. Luoya looked at the faint phantom in the air, and heaved a sigh of relief. He opened his mouth and asked the question that had been in his heart for a long time. Previously, I had a dream. The black-haired young man soaked in cold water and told the huge skeleton about the situation of that night. Gulandair listened to Luoya's narration without any fluctuation in his emotions. However, when Luoya said that he was watched by a pair of eyes, the light spots in the huge skeleton's eye sockets couldn't help but shrink. It's a little troublesome. When Gulandair finished listening to Luoya's words and gave such an evaluation, the black-haired young man couldn't help but have a serious expression. Until now, he had been together with Gulandair for several years, but this was the first time Luoya heard such words from his mouth. Generally speaking, when Luoya asked a question, he would give the word small, just like when he was a giant overlooking the world. These were all small questions, but this time it was troublesome. Is the owner of that pair of eyes very strong? I'm not sure. When you were dreaming, the passage was broken, and I couldn't sense anything. However, the ability you absorbed did come from a powerful monster. If this monster is only the servant of the Mother Goddess, then her strength is probably far beyond imagination. Gulandair, have you not heard of the Mother Goddess in your time? Maybe I have heard of it, maybe I haven't. It's probably because my head is empty. In the long years, I have forgotten too many things. I can't remember a lot of things when I was alive. Gulandair hesitated for a long time and said, It seems that I have to find some people for you. Chapter 209. For a long time, whenever Luoya and the Gulandair talked about the strength source substance, the giant skeleton didn't seem to care. After all, in the eyes of the Gulandair, who ruled the land in ancient times, anyone who didn't reach source rank 3 was just a small fry. It was a level that didn't need to be looked at. Of course, Luoya was an exception. Crown origin substance. This was without a doubt a very special origin substance. Although it had the basic functions of an origin substance, relying on the bloodline, it could unleash unimaginable power. Under extreme circumstances, the owner of this origin substance could rely on the strength of a contestant to defeat opponents several levels higher. Of course, it wasn't a good thing to defeat opponents who were stronger than him. The strength of a contractor would often cause excessive corrosion to the owner of the crown, which would lead to troublesome side effects. But it had to be said that no matter the level of the owner of the crown's source substance or its bloodline, it would be a major unstable factor. As long as one was willing to sacrifice himself, even the emperor would be dragged down. You didn't have so many troubles in the past. I could deal with those rats in the dark. But the situation might change in the future. Sometimes having more people is a powerful advantage. The Gulan Daer rarely emphasized the theory of numbers to Luoya, which made the black-haired boy stunned. Giants were famous for their outstanding individual combat strength. They rarely fought in groups. He didn't expect that the Gulan Daer would ask him to expand his combat strength. A person's energy is limited, no matter how strong they are. I understand this principle. But speaking of manpower, Akat Hill should have a lot of people, right? Luoya thought as he recalled the number of soldiers that were twice the number of ordinary marquis families. The Akat family might not be good at other things, but at least they were outstanding in terms of military strength. However, the Gulan Daer shook his head at Luoya's words. It's not that kind of a sea of people. What I mean is to find some people who can fight. Fight. This description was very simple. It was very suitable for the Gulan Daer's style. But the problem was, what did this big brother mean by fight? Luoya was very clear. Source rank 3? It's better if it's higher. This. The black-haired youth looked at the big skeleton with a forced expression. Naturally, the Akat clan had level 3 source grade experts, but these people were Ka Dia's right-hand men. They had been on the front lines for many years and held important positions. Although Luoya was the only son of the Akat clan, it was impossible for these people to follow behind him all the time. It would be a waste. Experts like Galaci who stayed close to Xia Luot were few and far between. Furthermore, the Sorofia family had always felt that Galaci was overqualified. It was just that she was unwilling to do anything else. In the end, level 3 source grade experts were not cabbages that could be found anywhere. They were recruited by various countries over the years, and the supply could not meet the demand. The level 3 source grade experts of the 3 major origin substances had long been snatched away. The experts of the origin substances had their own families. Unless they were completely subdued by the Akat clan, no one would give up their family to protect Luoya. According to the requirements of the Gulan Daer, Luoya found that only the experts of the pagans could be recruited. Of course, he was not the only one who found out. In fact, the kings of small countries with weak competitiveness had also found out long ago. However, very few of them were recruited. After all, considering the danger of these people, they were ticking time bombs of level 3 source grade. Normal people would not be able to handle it. Although others might not be able to handle it, Luoya might not be able to do so. This was because he had already grasped the highest control of 2 pathways. The Gulan Daer and Paitila, as the supreme existences of the ancient times, had reached the limit of their own origin substances. The pagans in this world who used their origin substances could be said to be under their control. Luoya was not clear about the Paitila's origin substance, but the Gulan Daer's Luoya was often used. So are there many people who still use the power, origin substance? Not too many. The giant's origin substances are not suitable for you. That was true. Looking at the giant's bodies, the power, origin substance was probably one of the cruder origin substances. There were probably not many suitable for the human race. Luoya thought so and sighed. He had to dispel the thought in his heart until the Gulan Daer continued. There are probably only 2 people who can be bribed. Is that so? That's 2. Big brother, what did you say? The black-haired young man sitting in the cold pool raised his head and stared at the Gulan Daer's skull for a while. The giant skeleton was silent for a while under his gaze and asked, Source level 3, do you need it? Yes. Call them. Call as many as you can. Luoya clenched his fist and gave an answer with excitement. The 2 source level 3 pagans led the pagans group. This was the highest organization among the pagans' largest mercenary group. With the stability of the Gulan Daer's control, they did not have to worry about falling into depravity. They were simply the best foreign aid. Thinking of this, Luoya was excited, but at the same time, he was a little worried. This deal was almost beneficial to Luoya, but what about these pagans who used the power, origin substance? Although the pagans generally did not have a good life in this world, they could still make a living in some small countries that valued strength more. With the strength of Source Level 3, it was possible to be a general. If Luoya wanted to buy them, the Akkad family could also offer a price, but would they be willing to come? For this question, the Gulandayer gave his own answer. Although the giant skeleton didn't know whether these people were living well or not, as a source substance user, the Gulandayer could not only have a bad influence on them, but it could also have a good effect. For example, he could bless these downstream units. Chapter 210. In the past few years, Luoya had been paying attention to the Favorability Exchange District. The reason was that this district often had good things that were beneficial to the management of the territory. As the acting lord, Luoya had been able to achieve rapid economic growth in the past few years because of the Favorability Exchange District. However, even though Luoya had bought a lot of things here, he had only bought things that he could understand. For example, he bought things like furnaces and wooden bricks. As for the mysterious items, Luoya had never touched them. This was because in the distant past, there was a psychological shadow in his heart called the Skeleton Funeral Group. It was best not to buy things recklessly. This was a lesson that Luoya had learned at that time. Because of this, Luoya was very cautious when shopping in the Favorability Exchange District. For example, when Luoya saw abstract terms like glory gathering place, he would shrink back. Not only because he didn't know what they were used for, but also because they were expensive. That's right. In Luoya's long search, he had discovered a pattern. That was, these abstract terms were ridiculously expensive. They would easily cost millions of favorability points. Even though AI Lizzie could produce 18,000 favorability points per mu, it still couldn't withstand such a torment. Fortunately, Luoya's favorability points had risen like a rocket in the past few years. Every day, he would be able to obtain a large amount of favorability points by walking around the city twice. If the favorability points were really lacking, Luoya could hold a lord meeting. In name, it was to listen to the opinions of the citizens. However, in addition to listening to opinions and dealing with problems, Mr. Luoya's sickle didn't delay. From this point of view, even though AI Lizzie gave a lot of favorability points, Luoya was actually using a more efficient method. However, just like how the human body could temporarily not eat, Luoya also had its own ecology. Favorability points could be obtained in the future, but AI Lizzie couldn't be ignored. Under Luoya's guidance, the increase in favorability points wasn't as exaggerated as expected. However, even so, it was still more than 200,000 points. Of course, speaking of this, the plus 80,000 points that Xia Luod obtained in one go could be said to be a wave of wealth. Today, when the Gold Exchange District ran out of potions, Luoya unexpectedly found something in the Favorability Exchange District. Bell of Protection. The clear bell calms people's soul. The blessing of protection makes people enjoy peace. Price: 500,000 favorability points. Monthly half-price limited price. 50% off. Price: 250,000 favorability points. To be honest, when Luoya saw this item, his first reaction was a pleasant surprise. After all, in this special period, slowing down his progress was the last thing that Luoya wanted. The system refreshed once a month, and there might not be any potions next time. Luoya really couldn't afford to waste time. However, after a short moment of excitement, a question began to appear in his mind. Is this item okay? How useful is it? After thinking carefully for a long time, Luoya decided to make a double insurance. Although the Bell of Protection was expensive, it was currently on sale, so he could still afford it. For his own safety, Luoya was very willing to spend points. Moreover, this could also be used as an experiment by Luoya to introduce abstract items. Other than that, the other insurance was the ordinary level-up potion. Level-up potions had existed since ancient times. Now Xia also had them. Luoya was currently in the city with the most variety of materials in the continent. Naturally, He wanted to find a better one for himself. However, he had to admit that the level of potions in this era was terrible. No matter how good the potion was, its use would be limited. Luoya still didn't know whether 1 plus 1 was greater than or equal to 2. But this was already his best plan at this stage. After planning everything, Luoya came out of the bath and went ashore. He reported his needs through the servants. Of course, Luoya said that he was going to buy it. The Akat family was now considered a wealthy aristocrat, so a level-up potion wouldn't be free. After the riot was classified as an accident, both Xia Luot and Ai Lizi were taken away by their fathers. Although Ka Dia and Brosnan had to maintain a good atmosphere in public, it didn't mean that the two girls' mistakes were forgotten. Nua Ayer didn't have any parents, so she escaped the disaster. However, after this incident, she obediently went back home. At least for today, Luoya's side was peaceful. After Luoya took the initiative to take the blame, Brosnan had a more comprehensive understanding of his daughter's fiancé. Perhaps because of this, when the sound of a carriage sounded in the evening, the servants came with an exquisite box. They didn't mention the price at all until Luoya asked about the exquisite carved glass vase. Young Master Luoya, you are a distinguished guest of the Sorofia family. During your stay in the 100 Birds Hall, we will take care of all your needs. This is our honor, so please don't mind. After saying so, the servant smiled and left, making Luoya smile helplessly. After thinking for a while, the black-haired young man nodded slightly. As the saying goes, it would be impolite to refuse. Since the Sorofia family was so enthusiastic, it would be strange for him to refuse. After thinking it through, Luoya looked at the crystal-clear liquid in the container carefully. Should I say that expensive things always have a better appearance? The potion given by the Sorofia family was obviously a high-grade product. It was orange in color and somewhat resembled wine. The smell wasn't pungent, and compared to the Biollo series, it was much better in appearance. However, the appearance of a potion wasn't the most important thing. Luoya thought so and shook his head. He opened the system and looked at the bell of protection. After hesitating for a while, he finally clenched his teeth and chose to buy it. After a flash of light, the item that cost 250,000 points of Luoya finally appeared. However, what the black-haired young man didn't expect was that this item that sounded very big and cost a lot of points was actually not that big. In fact, it was a little small. It was a small black pocket-sized bell. He didn't know what material it was made of, but its shape was very traditional, and even a little ordinary. It was only as tall as Luoya's calf, and could be held with one hand. If one didn't pay attention, one would think that it was a big bell. However, the patterns on it were very complicated. Looking at the simple and mysterious little bell, Luoya felt a little more at ease. He placed the two items on the table and looked out of the window. Now that the life exhaustion and the ice status had been removed, only the undying status was still affecting him. Then there was only one thing left to do. Let's have dinner together after a long time, with Miss Angel. Chapter 211. Tonight, Rosetta City was calm and peaceful. The refreshing breeze brought the unique warmth of spring, and on the open-air terrace of the pavilion of Celta, the warm breeze was even more obvious due to the height. Luoya sat on a chair and looked through the fence at the bustling night view outside the pavilion. He couldn't help but feel a little dazed. After a long time, he sighed with deep emotion. Rosetta is really a bustling place. In Xia, generally speaking, there was no concept of a city that never sleeps. After all, although the lighting tools in this era were not expensive, it was still a kind of cost, and the lighting conditions were generally poor. The larger the city, the more it needed to light up, and the more difficult it was to do so. For a capital city like Akate City, it would be completely dark a few hours after nightfall. The people had already adapted to the life of working at sunrise and resting at sunset. Going to bed early and waking up early wasn't just a saying, it was a habit cultivated by the living environment. However, in Rosetta, this situation had changed. As one of the most bustling cities in the human world, Rosetta was different at night. The streets and alleys were filled with various special minerals mined by the Sorofia family from the southern mountains. As long as they were injected with curse power, They could replace the traditional light source. Therefore, there were many colorful lights in Rosetta at night, and there was even a large-scale night market with people coming and going. Such a scene seemed to bring Luoya back to his previous life. Well, this is indeed a bustling city, but bustle also means noise to a certain extent. Compared to that, I prefer the silence of the St. Du prayer meeting at night. I see. Everyone has different preferences. The St. Du is the seat of the Holy See, so it should be more solemn. Then where do you like better? I like both. When I'm bored, I can find interesting novelties in Rosetta. When I'm annoyed, the prayer meeting in St. Du Lorraine is very good. Of course I like Acate City the most. After all, it's my home. Sorry, I don't choose the golden nest or the silver nest. I choose my own dog nest. Facing Nua Ayer's deep question, Luoya gave his answer decisively. Nua Ayer was not happy or sad. She turned her head and looked at the scenery in the distance silently. Looking at the princess like this, Luoya could not help but gradually frown. What's going on? The black-haired boy looked at the girl and fell into deep thought. Luoya came to see the Nua Ayer an hour ago to remove the undead status. Although the undead status was rare, it wasn't difficult to remove. Luoya's medical treatment could completely remove it. However, because Luoya was in a hurry to level up as soon as possible and hadn't seen the Nua Ayer for a long time, he simply came to see the Nua Ayer. Heathcliff's angelic bloodline had many magical uses. One of them was that it was very effective in restraining the undead status. With the help of Nua Ayer, Luoya's undead status could be said to be cured. However, during the treatment process, Luoya discovered one thing. Nua Ayer's mood was low, or rather, she seemed to have something on her mind. Originally, Luoya thought that it was because the three girls had made a mistake, and the other two were taken back to educate and criticize. Nua Ayer escaped the disaster, so Luoya seemed a little uncomfortable. But now, it seemed that this princess might really be troubled. Nua Ayer, do you have anything to say? After thinking for a while, Luoya decided to ask directly. After hearing the boy's question, Her Royal Highness also turned her head. Her lips opened and closed several times as if she wanted to say something, but she hesitated. After pondering for a long time, she only let out a sigh. Nua Ayer Heathcliff was indeed troubled. Since the banquet, Xia Luo's doubts had become a thorn in her heart, and every time she thought about it, she would be annoyed. On the other hand, Nua Ayer was busy because of her identity as the successor. For a long time, Luoya and Nua Ayer spent less time together. It felt like a long-distance relationship. A weekly letter and a short phone call were all the communication between Nua Ayer and Luoya. In the past, the girl thought that this was enough to protect her relationship, but the huge impact of Xia Luo's appearance completely awakened Nua Ayer's crisis awareness. AI Lizzie was stimulated by Xia Luo's behavior, and so was Nua Ayer. However, unlike AI Lizzie, Nua Ayer was mentally unbalanced and worried about gains and losses. Luoya, I have a question that I've always wanted to ask you. Are you happy being with me? After hesitating for a long time, the blonde girl mustered up the courage to ask this question. Luoya's eyes widened slightly when she heard this. After a moment of daze, confusion appeared in her eyes. Although it was a bit exaggerated to say that, in the current human world, Nua Ayer could be said to be the most respected person in the entire younger generation. Whether it was the theocracy of Saint Maester or the Vatican, she had a huge influence that covered the entire Xia. Nua Ayer was the princess of the theocracy. Even Xia Luo's father, Bruce, had to treat her with respect. If such a girl made a vow to protect you as her responsibility, would there be anyone in the world who would not be happy? Nua Ayer, what's wrong with you? Why do you ask? Because I'm wondering if I've been forcing you to cooperate with my hobby all this time. Did this behavior arouse your disgust? Ah? Luoya was speechless when she heard the girl's words. After a moment of hesitation, she let out a big sigh. I say, what are you thinking about? Didn't I already know what kind of person you are from the beginning? If I really hated you, I wouldn't even get close to you. And in the end, when did I say that I wanted you to change? The black-haired boy rubbed his brows speechlessly. He looked at the girl opposite him who widened her eyes in surprise and said faintly, Chapter 212. While Luoya was enduring Nuair's stormy attacks on the balcony at the top of the pavilion of Celta, Xiaoluot Sorofia was facing a serious challenge on another battlefield. This evening, a banquet was also held at the Carlos Hall in the second manor of Sorofia. However, unlike the banquet where Nuair and Luoya supported each other, Sorofia's banquet was quite serious and unusually polite. There was only one person invited to this banquet, and that was the head of the Akat family, Kadia Akat. As for the invitee, it was Bruce Sorofia. However, this was not a secret meeting between the two of them, but a third person. At the dining table, the reddish-brown-haired girl was eating her meal with proper etiquette. Beside her ears were the occasional chatter of the two family heads. From yesterday's exchange of pleasantries until now, Bruce and Kadia were already quite familiar with each other, which was why their conversations were much more relaxed. Marquis Kadia, the weather on your side this year seems to be better than in the past. Indeed, this winter is not as cold as in the past, but there is still a lot of snow. The weather on Rose's side is still stable. I think this year's grain production should be good. Haha, indeed. Our Ministry of Agriculture also expects this year to be a bumper harvest. Bruce took a sip of wine and said so with a smile. He looked to the side and glanced at Xiaoluot, who was obviously more nervous than usual. He sighed in his heart. Now that the banquet had reached the dessert segment, the three people at the dining table were basically chatting. After a long period of foreshadowing and getting closer to each other, Bruce began to work. Marquis Kadia, I'm very sorry about this incident. Xiaoluot was too concerned about Luoya, so she did this on impulse. Haha, Mr. Bruce, you don't have to apologize. Our family's AI Lizzie has always been infatuated with Luoya, which led to this ridiculous incident. We have to apologize to the host, Rose. Marquis Kadia is too polite. This time, the successful treatment of Luoya back to Rose is all thanks to Miss AI Lizzie. Luoya and Xiaoluot found many ancient technologies of the Kingdom of Sophia in the ruins together. They are our benefactors. His recovery is our most sincere wish. The two fathers laughed back and forth, which made Xiaoluot's face even paler. Marquis Kadia's undisguised support for his adopted daughter could be said to be clear and easy to understand. Most importantly, Xiaoluot didn't hear anything about the marriage contract from him. The marriage contract between the two families was now in name only due to Nuair's intervention. After this incident, although Xiaoluot seemed to still have a name, in fact, it was a loss because without the marriage contract, the other two had the approval of Luoya's father, Kadia. They were far superior to her. There was no doubt that this was an unfair competition. Although Luoya was a person who didn't pay much attention to these things, the boy paid more attention to the most direct feelings when getting along with people. However, falling in love and getting married were two different things. Once it came to marriage, Kadia was a mountain that couldn't be bypassed. After understanding this, Xiaoluot naturally didn't dare to act rashly. She decisively looked for Bruce, hoping to solve this matter. But so far, Kadia's attitude still hadn't changed. This time, Luoya helped our Sorofia family find important historical relics, many of which we have searched for hundreds of years without success. I think this means that the friendship between our two families has reached a fateful moment, and we can go further. Hahaha, Mr. Bruce, you flatter me. Luoya was just following the guidance of the bloodline. It was unexpected that she could help find Sorofia family's target curse vessel. As for the further cooperation between our two families, I agree. The economic development of Akat Hill is inseparable from Luoya's assistance and support. Under Kadia's modest and polite change of topic, Bruce smiled on the surface, but he was helpless in his heart. On the other side, Xiaoluot was completely at a loss. To this day, Xiaoluot didn't understand why Kadia was so opposed to her contacting Luoya. As the eldest daughter of the Sorofia family, Xiaoluot ruled a region with her extraordinary talent when she was 9 years old. Even the leaders of the Rosetta Chamber of Commerce respected her from the bottom of their hearts. Whether it was talent, status, or ability, Xiaoluot was almost impeccable. However, these seemed to be ineffective in front of Kadia. Where am I lacking? Why is Luoya's father so annoying? Is it because I forcibly brought back Luoya? No, that's not right. Kadia's interference was already there before that. Then why? The girl clenched her fists and bit her lips. There were countless questions in her heart. However, in the face of her lover's parents, Xia Luo didn't dare to question them at all. She was so nervous that she didn't even dare to speak. That's right, Charlotte, who had never had stage fright before, was now scared. She felt that this was the first time she had fought in a situation where she didn't have any information to support her, and didn't understand her opponent's needs. If she were to lose, she might lose the love that she treasured. This price was too great, so great that she couldn't bear it. Well, it's getting late, Mr. Bruce, Miss Xia Luo, it's almost time for me to leave. After a flawless chat, Kadia politely said goodbye with a smile on her face. Bruce glanced sideways at Xia Luo, who hadn't spoken much all this time, and stiffened when she heard Kadia say goodbye. He knew that tonight's banquet was probably in vain. What a pity. This should have been the best opportunity, but Kadia's attitude was very firm. His daughter's marriage was probably. The brown-haired middle-aged man thought about the Akot family's attitude all this time and felt pessimistic. Xia Luo's abnormal performance tonight made him very anxious. There was no doubt that his daughter had fallen deeply in love, and there was a problem with her mentality. It was precisely because of this that she appeared to be timid in front of Luoya's father. However, this actually made her look bad. Showing her true self and showing her outstanding side to conquer the other party's parents was what Xia Luo should do now. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Bruce stood up and sent Kadia off. On the other side, the brown-haired girl also stood up stiffly. Xia Luo felt that her brain was numb. She also knew that today's private meeting was the best opportunity, but her performance was far worse than she imagined. Looking at Kadia's back as she stood up and left, Xia Luo suddenly had a feeling. If she let her leave like this, Kadia's impression of her would be completely formed. She had to do something, but what could she do now? Her mind was blank, and her breathing was difficult to control. The high tension made it difficult for Xia Luo to move. The girl lowered her head and desperately thought of a solution. Suddenly, she recalled the moment when she pulled the trigger and shot Luoya's body under the cover of the terrifying black monster. At that moment, Xia Luo's love transcended life and death, and defeated the most fundamental fear of mankind. Compared to that, what was the current situation? Even a monster like Mr. Darkness couldn't cut off her love for Luoya. Was she going to ruin her feelings in this peaceful time? Chapter 213. Xia Luo had an epiphany the moment she rushed out. What could move Kadia? Even someone as intelligent as her had never thought of this question. For Kadia, a powerful minister of the theocracy, one of the 5 great nobles, and the lord of a large number of territories, there was almost nothing in the world that could change his mind. But if he were to disregard all this, as a father of a single-parent family and a man who had been widowed for many years, there was one thing that could move him. That was true love. Kadia was a rare person among the nobles who cared about feelings, especially when it came to the relationship between a man and a woman. Kadia was very different from other nobles who traded marriages. Because of this, he did not think highly of Xia Luo's marriage from the very beginning. No matter how it was covered up, this was still a transaction between 2 families. But what if Xia Luo could show true love that far surpassed this transaction, and that Kadia appreciated? The girl was unsure of the answer to this question, but she was willing to take a gamble and use her truest feelings as a weapon to attack. I love Luoya. Please don't stand in the way of our love. This is the only request I have in my life. The moment the girl bent down, both Bruce and Kadia in the room were stunned. The sound of the clock ticking echoed in the luxuriously decorated room like never before. Kadia frowned after a few seconds. Miss Xia Luo, I think you might have some misunderstandings. Please get up. Uncle Kadia, you might know that when I first met Luoya, I was misunderstood and induced. Before the Lord Marquis could finish his excuses, the reddish-brown-haired girl retorted with this almost concrete inducement incident. Kadia's expression changed the moment she said that, and began to turn a little ugly. Mentioning the induced incident in front of his face would undoubtedly make him feel like he was holding her accountable. As the mastermind behind this incident, Kadia naturally felt somewhat embarrassed after hearing this. Xia Luo was aware of this situation, but her next words stunned the Marquis. Uncle, I have no opinion about that incident because it wasn't just the induced people. At that time, I also thought that my marriage with Luoya was inappropriate. As she said this, Xia Luo raised her head and looked straight into Kadia's eyes with her emerald eyes. 100-year marriage contract. Although it sounds historical, marriage itself shouldn't be decided by the past. Marriage represents the future. It's the beginning of one person choosing another person to support each other and fight against all external factors in the future. It's beautiful and sacred, but it shouldn't be planned. That is indeed the case. Listening to Xia Luo's understanding of marriage, Kadia, who was free to love, could not help but nod with a lot of emotions. Xia Luo looked at the man who was willing to listen to her and felt emotional. She recalled the situation with Luoya at that time and continued. So when I met Luoya, there were many misunderstandings between us. I'm afraid you didn't know that our relationship started from mutual disgust, but just like my divination, love is as unpredictable as fate. When we were exploring the legacy of the Sophia dynasty, our lives were in danger several times. In that special environment, we fought together and did our best to save each other. Luoya used his own body to block an attack for me, and I once gave him the hope of survival. Our love was born in such an environment. Its birth was accompanied by the most difficult test, but in the end our love won. Uncle Kadia, after going through all this, do you think I can still let go? Xia Luo asked in a choked voice. The Marquis, who heard Xia Luo and Luoya's story for the first time, could not help but widen his eyes slightly. For a moment he did not know how to answer. Seeing this, the girl did not press him and only silently lowered her head again. Uncle, I know I came late. I'm not as good as Princess Nua Ayer to provide him with protection. I don't have the deep accumulation of experience with him like Miss Ai Lizzie, but I will never lose to anyone when it comes to love Luoya. Please give me a chance, I beg of you, I beg of you. The reddish-brown-haired girl's face was covered in tears halfway through her words. Her tears fell drop by drop onto the carpet. Seeing this, Kadia was finally completely speechless. Xia Luo's true feelings undoubtedly brought a huge impact to Kadia. At the same time, it also made him feel nostalgic. In a trance, the Marquis seemed to see the figure of his deceased wife, as well as the nobles who opposed his marriage when he was young. But what he did not expect was that many years later, he would actually stand in the same position. An unprecedented emotion rose in the man's heart. He looked at the girl in front of him, and his gaze gradually softened. Sigh, I'm old. The black-haired middle-aged man sighed, and said to the crying Xia Luo, Child, get up. I agree to your request. Uncle Kadia? You mean, in the future I won't object to the matter between you and Luoya, but at the same time, I won't agree to it. Kadia said and sighed silently. Nua Ayer and Ai Lizzie were first, and Kadia had already expressed his support, so this was the biggest concession he could make. I can't control Luoya's thoughts. Everything depends on you. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Hearing Kadia's acknowledgement to a certain extent, Xia Luo's heart relaxed, and her tears flowed even more uncontrollably. Chapter 214. The system gave Roha a clock. It seems like it can be said that. Tasting the sweet potion in his mouth, Roha sighed and touched the bell on the table. He couldn't help but have a question in his mind. How do I use this thing? Generally speaking, the bell needed to be struck, but when Luoya thought about striking the bell while breaking through, he had an inexplicable feeling of a senior monk passing away. Luoya thought about it and didn't ask the maids for help. Instead, he tried using the spell. No matter what, it was still a high-level item. Luoya felt that it shouldn't be activated by human power, and it turned out that he was right. The moment the curse power poured into the small black bell, the simple black bell seemed to have come back to life from the dust of ancient times. The bell vibrated and buzzed, and at the same time, many incomprehensible runes began to squirm. And the next moment, they suddenly exploded. After a light ring, the runes spread out and shot into the air. The mysterious runes formed a unique domain that enveloped Luoya. In a trance, the young man seemed to hear the sweet sound of a bell from afar, but when he looked carefully, the black bell on the table didn't move at all. Is this something like a barrier? Luoya looked around and nodded. At the same time, a warm feeling spread through Luoya's body. A faint sleepiness began to spread in the young man's mind. Listening to the sound of the bell, Luoya calmed down and silently activated the spell. The room fell into silence. The next morning, a carriage arrived at the wide courtyard of the 100 Birds Hall. It was a luxurious black carriage with the symbol of the Eye of Candlelight. The guard who came to inquire saw the family emblem and immediately recognized that it was the private carriage of the Akot family. He greeted them with a smile and let them in. Everyone in the 100 Birds Hall, from the butler to the ordinary guards, knew about the Akot family's situation. To describe the current situation, the 100 Birds Hall could be said to be hiding a mistress in a golden house. Even though this Jiao was a man, and after understanding the thoughts of the master of the mansion, their young mistress, the servants in the mansion naturally felt friendlier towards the Akot family, who were allies to begin with. Stepping down from the carriage, Count Kadia nodded at the servants who greeted him with a smile, and was led to the guest room. It had been a few days since he came to Rose. The festive atmosphere had subsided. He had also met privately several times. Now that many things were done, it was time for Kadia to take a good look at his son who was kidnapped by a beautiful girl. However, to his surprise, Luoya was very different from the last time. He was full of energy. The Marquis, who carefully observed for a moment, couldn't help but be surprised. Did you break through? Count Kadia's powerful perception caught the spell leaking from Luoya's body. He couldn't help but ask in surprise. Under the inquiry of his father, Luoya also gave an honest answer. The middle-aged man who learned that his son had reached source level 4 couldn't help but be overjoyed. I didn't expect it, I really didn't expect it. When you were young, your extraordinary talent was very poor. I thought it would be difficult for you to achieve anything in this life. Who would have thought that you would awaken the family bloodline? Kadia looked at Luoya and sighed. Reaching source level 4 was not a small matter. It must be known that in the current Xia, there were at least hundreds of noble children. Although most of them were only in name, the average strength of this group was indeed higher than ordinary people, and even higher than the lower nobles. Luoya was 13 years old this year, and would be an adult next year. At that time, studying in the country of scholars would be an essential step. It was a gathering of the young elites of the human world that was far from comparable to so far. There he would meet a large number of people of the same age. At this age of youth, strength was often the most important thing. Being able to reach source level 5 was basically the first-class standard of this age. It was an elite who had the right to speak and was envied. But even so, it was far from unique. The world was very big. The consequences of looking down on the heroes of the world was most likely to be slapped in the face. However, reaching source level 4 was different. Source level 4 was a threshold. It was the threshold that attracted the most attention of the peerless geniuses. Whether it was Nua Iyer, Ai Lizi, or Xia Luot, they were all at the top of the pyramid of this era. Their talents and abnormalities could be seen at a glance. However, Luoya was not. In Kadia's eyes, even if Luoya awakened his bloodline, it would be extremely difficult for him to reach source level 4. However, this inherent concept was now broken by Luoya's own efforts. This made Kadia happy and gratified. On the other side, the black-haired boy did not have such a feeling. In fact, Luoya felt that his current condition was not good. After experimenting with Xia's highest-level promotion assistance potion, Luoya deeply understood that the Burrow series was really top-notch. Although it did not look gorgeous and often had strange side effects, in terms of effects, the Burrow series could be said to be very good. Whether it was the golden partner or the fake wine, Luoya would not be able to get up after drinking it. However, after he recovered, he would immediately stabilize his breakthrough. However, this time, Xia's promotion assistance potion was not the same. The assistance potion was really an assistance potion. Unlike the Burrow series, Luoya had to control and guide the curse power to a certain extent by himself. He struggled for an entire night before he succeeded, and this was still within the barrier of the Bell of Protection. It had to be said that this time, Luoya's caution had paid off. The bell of protection that he gritted his teeth and bought was very useful. In the high-pressure environment of the promotion period, encountering setbacks was very likely to double the pressure and make one go astray. However, within the barrier of the bell's sound, all these worries and tensions seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Something similar to a blessing maintained the peace of his heart. It could be said that half of the reason why Luoya took an entire night to succeed was because of the bell of protection. After experiencing it once, Luoya also understood that the effect was the same within the barrier. In other words, several people could use the bell of protection at the same time. Luoya was very satisfied with this. After all, who did not like to exercise with more people? The boy rejoiced. After seeing Luoya's strength, Kadia also felt a lot more at ease. He waved at Luoya and told him the purpose of his visit this time. Luoya, I want to talk to you about your marriage. Chapter 215. Once upon a time, Kadia felt that his family's future goal was very clear, and that was to have a house full of children and grandchildren. The Akat family was a family with a rare bloodline. In the past 1,000 years, the members of the family rarely prospered. Usually, only one person would carry on the family line, which was quite rare among the nobles. Kadia's father, Bran, had once told him about the characteristics of the Akat family. They were good at fighting, but not good at fighting in groups, because the Akat family didn't have groups. They could only fight in groups alone. When Bran said this, he had a helpless expression on his face. He looked at Kadia with high hopes, but unfortunately, Kadia was defeated in the end. According to the family tradition, Kadia gave birth to an only child. After discovering that Luoya's talent was mediocre when he was young, Kadia's thoughts became much clearer. Being an ordinary person wasn't a bad thing for the Akat family to some extent. After all, the most important task in the life of an ordinary noble was to give birth. Without extraordinary powers, they wouldn't have too many duties and responsibilities. They would be fine if they stayed in the territory and didn't wander around, so naturally, they would have more opportunities to reproduce. In fact, in the Akat family's 1,000 years of history, the heads of the Akat family who prospered were always mediocre in terms of extraordinary power. One reason was that there were many births, and the other reason was that there were many receptacles. If they weren't very capable, they would usually marry the daughter of a count who was of equal status. Generally speaking, the first wife of such a status wouldn't be able to stop the marquis from taking in concubines. Therefore, the heads of the Akat family during these times were rare to have many wives and concubines, and many children and grandchildren. Of course, after a few generations, they would usually fall into a population crisis. The wives would return to the powerful family, and the husband and wife would both be extraordinary, so their fertility rate was basically the lowest among all couples. Kadia was familiar with the family's history, so he was very clear about the morality of the ancestors in this aspect. But it had to be said that even though Kadia had traveled extensively, he still panicked and had a headache when he saw the girls around Luoya every day. The princess of the Saint Maester theocracy, the successor to the president of the Rose Business Union, and the eldest daughter of the Akate family. When these few people gathered together, it would easily become a regional, or even international news. Perhaps it was due to the short lifespan of the Akate families awakened, but no matter if it was Nua Ayer, Ai Lizi, or Xia Luot, they all had a special concern for Luoya, and their desire to protect her was extremely high. Under the driving force of love, the strength of these girls soared like a rocket. In the past, it would be considered good to find one Nua Ayer in the entire human world. But now there were 3 of them. Moreover, these 3 girls obviously had no intention of giving up. 2 days ago, they even fought over Luoya. If he really only chose one in the future, would the other 2 be willing to let it go? For example, Ai Lizi, in order to increase her strength, she practiced almost masochistically. Her lifelong wish was to marry Luoya and have a baby with him. When the time came, if Luoya chose someone else, would she be able to give her blessings as a sister? This kind of rejection of the meaning of life, the blow of being abandoned, Kadia felt that it was normal for love to turn into hate. The murder of love was like a knife, floating in Kadia's heart every day. He felt that he had to remind Luoya. Luoya, do you still remember what I told you to find more women? Yes, I remember. I take back those words. From now on you have to remember one thing. Never, never provoke girls again. After thinking for a long time, the Marquis looked at the youth in front of him, and said this sincerely. Hearing this, Luoya's face turned blank. The youth blinked. He didn't understand why his father, who was happy that he had advanced to level 4 of source rank, would suddenly mention this. However, with this request it wasn't a big deal. As expected, his father, who had yet to remarry, still advocated monogamy. Luoya looked at the single man in front of him, and sighed in his heart. Kadia's deep feelings were rarely seen in noble families. This was something that Luoya deeply felt. From this point of view, Luoya wasn't surprised that Kadia had changed his mind. Father, don't worry. I understand. Yes, it's good that you understand. I was afraid that you would be impulsive. I will learn from you and only marry one. Yes, that's HM. Hearing Luoya's reply, the Marquis' eyes widened. After a long time he pointed at the youth and trembled in anger, unable to speak. You still understand? What the hell do you understand? Kadia complained in his heart. On the other side, the black-haired youth looked at his agitated father and nodded with a smile. As expected, I guessed correctly. Sai, look at how happy my father is. He's trembling in excitement. Luoya felt good about having a filial son. Kadia became even angrier when he saw this. He didn't dare to say anything more, and could only clear up the misunderstanding between Luoya and himself. What I meant was that you shouldn't learn from me. What's wrong with marrying more? It's good to marry more. What I really meant was that in less than a year's time, you will be going to the academy. At that time, there will be more and more young people, and there will be more temptations. You must control yourself. Those who get close to you might not necessarily be good to you. They might be opportunists who covet our family. Kadia's words were quite serious. In fact, he had encountered such situations when he was young. He had even heard of successful cases of scheming women. If Luoya couldn't resist the temptation and married such a woman, then the Akat family would probably explode in a physical sense. Ai Lizzie didn't need to be mentioned. Luo Chet was right next to her, and the journey to the holy capital was about the same. He would probably be robbed and killed before he could even enter the Akat family. Kadia's mind was filled with scenes of chaos and war. Luoya was stunned for a moment before he held his chin, and fell into deep thought. Indeed, although the girls that Luoya met before this were extremely intelligent, they were all very pure. Moreover, their family backgrounds were the best in the Shia family. There was no reason for them to covet the Akat family. However, after entering the academy, things would be different. Sometimes green tea girls didn't care about age. It was even an instinct. Luoya didn't have much experience in the field of relationships. Chapter 216. Sharon Forest. This was a place Luoya was both familiar and unfamiliar with. Ever since he was a child, Luoya had heard of a terrifying forest in the south called Sharon Forest. There were countless monsters and cruel werewolves hidden within. If one didn't obey, they would be captured by the werewolves of Sharon Forest. That's right, this was a popular story in the Akate territory, or rather, in the entire southern part of the Saint Mestre Empire. In this story, werewolves were murderers who ran around everywhere, hiding in the dark corners, waiting to catch students. Children who heard this story for the first time would be scared to the point of crying. Of course, after Luoya recalled the memories of his past life, this kind of story no longer scared him. After growing up and doing some research, Luoya discovered that there were many strange and bizarre stories in Sharon Forest. There were several records of legends written based on these rumors in the Akat family. Under the influence of such large-scale rumors, Sharon Forest gradually became a synonym for terror among the people of various countries. It became a place where people rarely went. Those who went there were mostly explorers, and some of them had some mental issues. After all, anyone with a normal brain would go to ruins where there was a chance of getting rich overnight, and not go to the forest to call the werewolves brothers. Luoya actually knew the reason why these people were attracted. It was one of the legends that said that there was a huge secret hidden in the depths of Sharon Forest. In the past, Luoya didn't care about it, but after hearing Isha Bela's words, Luoya felt that it might have something to do with the activities of the Sage of Dusk. Tyrants, this was an ancient race that was almost extinct. Their lifespan was generally very long, and as long as they had the right conditions, it wouldn't be a problem for them to live for thousands of years. At least in the legends, these Tyrants gave people the feeling that they were very mysterious. However, Isha Bela's words were a little different. Drunkard Tyrants, what kind of strange species were they? Luoya's head was full of question marks as he thought about the name, but it was the only clue he had at the moment. The other necessary item was Conti from the ancient Austin Empire. Luoya, who was not that interested in alcohol, was also unfamiliar with this wine. This time, when Kadia came, Luoya originally wanted to report the situation of the Akat family to him, but when he heard that his father would return to the eastern region in 2 days, Luoya, who had a lot to say, became silent. He didn't want to cause trouble for his family. He didn't want his family to worry about him. This is the reason why many people don't tell their family about their difficulties. And now that Kadia is about to return to the border, Roja didn't want him to worry too much. After thinking about it, Roja could only ask about Kadia's understanding of the Sage of Twilight and the 6 disasters. I haven't heard of this before. Is it recorded in an ancient book? Looking at his father, who obviously didn't know anything, Luoya hesitated for a moment, then smiled and attributed this to the random talk he read at home. While the two were chatting, Xia Luot heard the news and rushed over. The 3 of them had lunch together. During the lunch, the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Kadia even said a few good words for Xia Luot, and asked Luoya to communicate more with Xia Luot about the territory, which made the red-haired girl very touched. Uncle Kadia, don't worry, the development of the Akat territory will be left to me and Luoya. Grabbing Luoya's hand, Xia Luot patted his chest excitedly as if he was giving a military order. He looked more enthusiastic than Luoya himself, but in fact it was true. Xia Luot didn't have any cards in his hand now. He was counting on the development of the Akat territory to prove his importance. Besides, although there weren't many officials and people in the territory, they still had some say. When they overwhelmingly supported the union between Xia Luot and Luoya, Kadia, as the lord, had to consider the interests of the territory and his family. To sum it up, Xia Luot wanted to keep Luoya as his mistress, the kind of mistress with the whole territory. Kadia knew the reason for Xia Luot's behavior. He had already promised not to interfere, so he chose to acquiesce. At the same time, he glanced at Luoya, who didn't have any self-awareness at all, and sighed in his heart. It's really strange. Is there a special attack against girls? Kadia didn't understand Luoya's routine, but he was sure that at least for the time being, everything was stable. Luoya, who had recovered from her injury, originally planned to leave with Kadia, but Xia Luot asked her to stay on the grounds of rehabilitation. Going back with Kadia was equivalent to going to see Ai Lizi. For Xia Luot, who had experienced this before, it was simply sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth. At least in Rose, Miss Luoya was unwilling to let go. After sending Kadia away, Luoya asked Xia Luot for the information collected during this period of time, and began to study it seriously. It had to be said that as a commercial organization, Sorofia's intelligence network was the most developed in the human world. Before Luoya and Xia Luot returned, the work of collecting clues had already begun. Now that the first piece of information had been sorted out, it naturally included the details of the so-called Conti wine. Luoya had never heard of Conti wine. In fact, no one else in the current Shia had ever heard of it. The reason was very simple. It was because the name of this wine had changed. The person who came up with the name of this wine was Isha Bela. She was an ancient person who lived hundreds of years ago. In that era, the common language of the people was still the ancient Austin language from the Second Era. It was a language that was more complicated than the modern language, and there were certain differences in pronunciation. The Conti wine mentioned by Isha Bela was gradually narrowed down to Cade wine in the Austin Empire. Cade wine, this was a kind of wine that was almost lost in the Austin Empire. But what surprised Luoya was that the reason it was lost was not because of the difficulty of brewing, but because of the taste. To put it simply, this wine was too disgusting. Wait, this is a mushroom wine? Mushroom? Can this thing be used to brew wine? Looking at the intelligence investigator who came to report, even Luoya couldn't hide his surprise. Hearing his question, the middle-aged intelligence director smiled bitterly. In fact, when he saw this report, he also asked the same question. Yes, sir. In fact, our people personally investigated it. It is indeed an ancient wine with a long history of brewing. But isn't it a bit careless to just make an inference based on the age? That's true, but we found a lot of supporting evidence. Supporting evidence? The black-haired boy looked up at the middle-aged man. The intelligence director and Luoya looked at each other and nodded solemnly. A few hundred years ago, the villages near Sharon Forest had received many large orders for cade wine. Chapter 217. Since ancient times, archaeology had always been a highly demanding task. In Luoya's previous world, when an ancient antique was unearthed, the experts would often argue endlessly about what it was used for. In Xia, although people lived longer, investigating an object from hundreds of years ago was not an easy task. According to legend, cade wine was a local wine produced in the border forest of the ancient Austin Empire in the Second Era. Its birth brought with it an indescribable taste. Generally speaking, ordinary people would not use mushrooms to make wine, especially the mushrooms called shants, which were used to make cade wine. They were colorful and beautiful, and the common reaction after eating them was slight dizziness. Yes, this mushroom was slightly poisonous, and the ancient people who used it to make wine were not stupid, but poor. The ancient Austinian Empire was vast, and although it was generally considered the golden age of human development, the living standards of the people in the remote mountainous areas were still very poor. They did not have good land like the Great Plains, and the limited amount of food they had was mostly for consumption. Brewing wine with grain was too extravagant for the mountain people. However, as the saying went, snakes have their own ways, rats have their own ways. Although food was not good, other things in the mountains could be used. After a long time of exploration, people found that this kind of slightly poisonous mushroom wine was the most cost-effective choice. After all, it could not be eaten otherwise. Although it was not very tasty after being made into wine, the toxins were broken down. It was a pure recycling of waste. As the saying goes, freeloading is a form of happiness, especially when this kind of freeloading is based on recycling waste. It is double the happiness. Because of this, Cardi wine was widely spread in the mountains of the ancient Austin Empire. After humans arrived in the New World in the Third Era, the conditions of the undeveloped mountains allowed the production of this wine to spread on a large scale. However, as the saying went, everything in the world can't escape the law of survival of the fittest. Cade wine was famous for its low cost and easy production in the era, when everyone was in trouble. However, as the human world gradually stabilized and the wasteland was turned into farmland, the continuous harvests improved people's living standards rapidly, and cade wine gradually began to show its weakness. That was, it tasted terrible. Xia's native mushroom wine had a somewhat unique taste, and the fragrance was different from that of traditional grain wine. After having surplus food, people chose to pursue a happy life, and naturally no longer went into the mountains to dig for mushrooms to make wine. Yes, there is no large-scale winemaking anymore. Only the mountain people may make some in their own homes. However, there is a village called Baudry at the edge of Sharon Forest that once produced this wine on a large scale hundreds of years ago. There are even ruins of the winery there. I have to say that Roja was quite lucky. Normally, this kind of winery would be forgotten in history. But fortunately, Padre Town was located in a remote mountainous area, and the whole town was poor. The stone building invested by a foreigner was strong and durable. After the order was gone, the winery was abandoned, but no one was willing to tear it down. It was the mayor's office, the militia's arsenal, and now it's used as the church's warehouse. Because it had always been under official management, the process of changing hands was very clear. So Sorofia's investigation was relatively smooth. After many inquiries, the estimated time of production was about 350 years ago. which was around the same time that Luoya and the others found out about the disappearance of the Twilight Sage. And our local investigation team collected a rumor that this wine was once called the werewolf wine, or werewolf nectar. Werewolf nectar? Yes, the source of the rumor was that hunters would occasionally find containers of cade wine in the mountains. They thought it might be because the werewolves of Sharon Forest liked this wine, and over time, it was called werewolf nectar. I see. Luoya's eyes widened when he thought of the name Drunkard Tree. He felt that he had guessed the truth of the rumor, and with the support of so much supporting evidence, Luoya had completely confirmed his path. First, he would go to Baudre get the wine, and then head south into Sharon Forest with the information he gathered there. It was now spring, and although Luoya didn't know the life schedule of the tree species, according to common sense, plants should be active in spring, so there shouldn't be a problem with the timing. But how did the tree know that he had wine? Did he need to shout from the forest? Luoya was very confused about this problem. And how would the tree species taste this mushroom wine? After all, some species of mushrooms grew on trees. Drinking wine made from the fungi on his body, if it was a human under the same conditions. Blurg. Luoya retched a few times when he thought of the scene. He hurriedly cut off the groundless thought, and began to think of more constructive problems, such as, how many people should he bring and how to get there? Although Luoya didn't believe the rumors of the werewolves in Sharon Forest, there must be a reason for their notoriety. As Sharon Forest was close to the land of chaos, it wasn't a peaceful place. In the past, there were many records of magical creatures descending from the mountains. Luoya didn't know how long it would take to find the tree species in the forest, so it naturally wouldn't be like a field trip. On the other hand, Sharon Forest was a notorious gathering place for heretics and cultists in Xia. Although these heretics wouldn't come out easily, it was entirely possible for some organization to establish a stronghold in Sharon Forest. Luoya's mission was to search the forest, so the chances of encountering some cultists were quite high. Cultists basically represented evil and evil. As a noble of the theocracy, Luoya couldn't avoid encountering them. Therefore, this trip had to focus on military strength. In this regard, Luoya currently had three options. The first option was naturally to deploy troops from Akat territory. The advantage was that his troops were reliable and had a clear command system. The disadvantage was that it would take time and require Kadia's approval. The procedures were complicated, and it would be difficult to find a reason to deploy troops. Akat's home wasn't connected to Sharon Forest, and he would have to pass through Loche's territory. He would also have to disguise himself and go to Austin to buy wine. Passing through two countries at once was very troublesome, and if Austin found out, it would be a big problem. After all, the relationship between the two countries was bad to begin with. If Luoya's identity was exposed, they would very likely be treated as invaders. After all, secretly marching troops in the territory of another country was a very stupid thing to do. The second option was Nuwa Ayer's delegation. As the princess of the theocracy, Nuwa Ayer was naturally escorted by guards. It had to be said that this was an elite team led by Archbishop Philip, whom Luoya had met once before. They were strong and had a small number of people, so they wouldn't be easily discovered. However, just like the advantages of this team, there were also disadvantages. The members of this team were too powerful for Luoya to command. Nuwa Ayer had said yesterday that she needed to return to the front lines as soon as possible, so she definitely wouldn't be able to travel with Luoya. The third option was to request assistance from Xia Luot. Luochai was bordered by Sharon Forest, and as a commercial country, there would be a large number of caravans entering and leaving the Austin Empire in the early spring after a long winter. It wouldn't be a problem to move covertly. However, in terms of guards, Luochai generally used pagan mercenaries. The loyalty of these people would be a problem. After all, in the face of life, sometimes money wasn't that important. It was the greatest tragedy to have money, but not have the life to spend it. After thinking for a while, Luoya eliminated the option of deploying troops from his territory. However, he was hesitant about the second and third options until Pei Tila's voice suddenly sounded. "Little guy, you haven't accepted my believers yet?" You have believers too? That's great. Where are they? Can you call them over?" Where are they? Aren't they the nearby guards? The Earth Mother asked in confusion under Luoya's shocked gaze. Chapter 218. The guards in the vicinity? When Luoya heard Peitila's question, his mind was a little confused. This was because Luoya's living environment had caused him to selectively filter out certain people, and the best example of this was the guards. The job of a guard could be said to be similar to maids. It was an indispensable job in every noble family. However, unlike the maids who had a strong presence, the guards could be said to be cautious and low-key. The guards of the Akat family were all professionals. Many of them were experienced soldiers who had retired from the battlefield. These people had fewer words compared to the ordinary guards. They only paid attention to one thing, and that was whether there was any danger present. Luoya had long gotten used to this kind of stealth mode, so when he looked at the guards at the door, he couldn't hide the surprise in his heart. Looking at the steel guards, Luoya recalled a conversation with Xia Luot. He remembered that the guards of the Sorofia family were their long-term partners. They specialized in defense, and they had accompanied Xia Luot to the Akat family before. However, this team, like Gulacy, stayed there until the church released them recently. Personal guards hiring heretics was not a crime among nobles, so there wasn't a problem of not being able to hire them. After asking, Luoya found out that the origin substance used by the guards was Peitila's perseverance. Perseverance was an origin substance that belonged to the Earth Mother. In the years after Peitila's death, it was spread by the Earth Mother. However, as time passed, the successors of Peitila were buried in history one after another. Now only Peitila was left in the upper reaches of perseverance. I thought you already knew, and even came to me because of them. No, they are Xia Luot's men. Our meeting was purely fate. Luoya waved his hand and told the truth to the Earth Mother. He also asked Peitila if there were any buffs like protection. The answer he got was similar to the Gulandair. Peitila could even temporarily strengthen the defense of the believers through blessings, which could be said to have improved the defense of this heretic army. The black-haired young man was overjoyed and immediately decided to pull the Church of Perseverance to his side. But he had to admit that this matter was quite difficult and required at least 2 steps. First, Luoya naturally had to discuss with their old employer, Sorofia. Luoya needed Sorofia to be willing to transfer the contract. After that, he had to negotiate with the leader of the Church of Perseverance. To be honest, Luoya was a little nervous about this matter. After all, the mercenaries were considered a part of the National Defense Force. Even if it was just a transfer contract, it would be difficult because this matter wasn't something that Xia Luot could decide. Instead, it required the approval of the military. Without a doubt, this was a big matter that needed to be discussed with Kadia. For this reason, Luoya made a special trip. Luoya, didn't we just meet? If there's nothing urgent, I will rest for a while. Father, I found a strong heretic army without any risk and want to absorb them. Now that you mention this, I'm not sleepy anymore. Well, not bad. As the traditional lord of the Akate family, Kadia immediately became energetic when he heard about Luoya's situation. He immediately prepared to discuss with the Church of Perseverance and strive to come up with a result before leaving. As for Xia Luot's side, Luoya naturally came personally. But what the young man didn't expect was that the red-haired girl didn't feel embarrassed after hearing Luoya's words. Instead, she was happier than Luoya. I didn't expect Miss Peitila to be the god of the Church of Perseverance. This is great, Charlotte said as she walked closer. She reached out and skillfully hugged the black-haired young man. Leaning on his shoulder, she let out a sigh of relief. Because of their bloodline, Xia Luot had always been worried about Luoya's safety. One must know that this world didn't only have those sleeping gods, but also their followers and heretics. For example, the Saint Heroes Society or similar organizations might still exist in this era. In the eyes of these people, Luoya was an enemy that must be eliminated. Compared to them who were hiding in the dark, Luoya and the others could only do their best to strengthen the defense around them. Dear, I'm afraid I can't accompany you to Sharon Forest this time. I know. At this time, it's impossible to let the 2 of us travel alone. Looking at the beautiful girl in front of him who had a criminal record, Luoya helplessly smiled bitterly. Originally, Xia Luo was the most suitable person to travel with Luoya, but her identity as a kidnapper made her disqualified. It's okay, it's good that you stay. The situation in Sharon Forest is uncertain. I'll go check it out first. A few hundred years have passed. We still don't know if the ant is still alive or not. Okay, but promise me, once you discover danger, don't act recklessly. Come back first and we'll discuss. Don't worry, don't you know me? I'm very steady. Looking at the young man who patted his chest without any self-awareness, Xia Luo's expression was conflicted for a long time before she sighed softly. Do you think that as the only son of a marquis family, you should experience the side effects of dying? Although I can eliminate your side effects, and I'm very happy to be with you every day, but dear, I don't want to see you in pain again. Chapter 219. Young Master Luoya? Is that the young master of the Akate family that we have been protecting? Yes, that's him. Within the Iron Wall Mercenary Corps armory in Rosetta City, Cynthia, the tall and slender commander, frowned as she looked at the clerk of the corp with dissatisfaction. You want us to be transferred to Akate territory? Are you kidding me? No, this is a notice from the officials of Rosetta City. They said that there was a change in the contract, and that it was transferred to Akate territory. They want us to listen to young Master Luoya's orders in the future. As for the salary, that's the theocracy. Cynthia's roar interrupted the clerk's explanation, and also shouted out the thoughts of the members nearby. The theocracy of Saint Maester was famous for its stability and ease of living in the human world. It was the base of the Holy See and a place of pilgrimage for thousands of Shia believers. It was beautiful and holy, but for the heretics the situation was completely different. It was dangerous. Since the twin wars of the theocracy 200 years ago, the heretics began to move out of the theocracy in large numbers. Today, there were very few heretics in the theocracy, and the relevant laws seemed to be stricter. The atmosphere in the theocracy of Saint Maester and Rosetta was completely different. In fact, the Iron Wall Mercenary Corps had been established for so many years, but they had never done any business in the theocracy of Saint Maester. This time, Xia Luo gave them too much money, so they made an exception and accepted it. But this time, they were detained by the theocracy, and they did not expect to get into such big trouble. Can we refuse? At least not in Rosetta. What about money? It's useless. This is the decision of the higher-ups. The old clerk stroked his beard and sighed. He looked at the beautiful commander and said, If you want to refuse, I'm afraid you will have to negotiate. You will have to talk to young Master Luoya face to face. Hey, you want the commander to meet a noble? No, it's too dangerous. The old clerk's words caused an uproar in the room. The members present were all agitated and tried to dissuade her. The reason was simple. Due to Cynthia's beauty and identity as a woman, she rarely saw outsiders, especially nobles. Meeting them often meant trouble. Due to her beautiful appearance and her identity as a female heretic, Cynthia had been pestered by quite a few disgusting nobles in the past. In fact, these nobles would even condescendingly request for her to become their mistress. The moment she thought of this, her stomach was filled with rage. Cynthia was 30 years old this year. As an extraordinaire, she looked like she was 18 years old. It could be said that she was youthful and beautiful. As the daughter of the previous leader, she had been in the mercenary group since she was young and had extraordinary talent. Today, she was already a level 3 source rank expert. If she was a possessor of 3 origin substances, these nobles probably wouldn't have dared to speak to her like this even if they had their guts broken. However, she was a heretic, and discrimination was a common attitude among the nobles, let alone the nobles of the Saint Maester theocracy. In my opinion, there are no good people in the Pope's country. Previously, Morton and his mercenary group didn't even get half of the money because they were heretics. That's nothing. Previously, they were attacked and detained by the regular army because they were marching in the Pope's country. It was the headquarters of Loche's side that collected the money to redeem them. The noise in the room continued. Examples of how the nobles of the Pope's country had harmed the heretics were brought up one after another, causing the brown-haired beauty's face to turn gloomy. Cynthia held her chin as she weighed the pros and cons. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had to go. As the saying goes, the situation is stronger than the person. Whether it was Loche's side or the Alcott family, she couldn't afford to offend them. After a long silence, Cynthia spoke of her decision. "I understand. I'll talk to him personally." In the luxurious carriage, the fully armed Cynthia took a deep breath and tried to calm her nervous emotions. This time, she dared to come personally not because she was brave but because she had carefully considered it. The main reason was that she had once escorted Luoya to Alcott. Luoya should be 13 years old this year. At this age there was a huge gap between him and Cynthia. On the other hand, as a guard, Cynthia had seen the young miss of the Sorofia family act intimately with him more than once. She heard that the two of them were engaged. Now that Luoya was living in the famous bird garden of the Sorofia family, no matter how she looked at it, the Luoya here would not touch her due to etiquette. Otherwise, it would be a public slap to the Sorofia family's face. Even if he had bad intentions, the source rank 3 Cynthia was not afraid. He was just a child. His status might be high, but how much strength could he have when he was spoiled? Moreover, he looked sickly. Chapter 220. The moment Luoya's hand touched Cynthia's head, a faint yellow curse appeared on the young man's body out of thin air, and rushed into the woman's body through Luoya's arm. The next moment, a huge impact made Cynthia's body stiffen. It wasn't an impact caused by an attack. In fact, Luoya didn't use any curse at all. It was a kind of suppression. It wasn't the amount of curse power, but the difference in quality. As the original Earth Mother, Paitila's power was the purest among all the Perseverance source substances. Although the believers who obtained the Perseverance source substance after countless years could also enjoy the afterglow, the difference between them and her was very obvious. This was also the reason why the ancient gods could easily affect the downstream units. The power of the Mother Earth was spreading, and from Cynthia's perspective, she had arrived at a valley. The majestic sky-devouring python was slowly appearing in front of her eyes. That was the majesty of the Mother Earth in ancient times, the most primitive manifestation of their power. Anyone who looked at it would feel a sense of subservience, just like the pilgrimage of a believer to the gods. Cynthia's body was in this illusion. The curse power quickly circulated, and the old wound on her abdomen started to heat up. The faint yellow curse power with an indescribable vitality began to fully heal her chronic illness that couldn't be cured with medicine. The brown-haired woman was shocked when she sensed the state of her body. Although the Perseverance source substance had the attribute of vitality, she had never seen such pure power before. The recurrence of old injuries was the biggest reason why the average mercenary's life was short. Unlike the physical injuries in Luoya's previous life, Shiya's injuries were difficult to completely heal due to the curse power. For example, rare poisons, special curses, and bloodline curses. These were things that could stick with you for the rest of your life. Cynthia's abdomen was once injured by a cultist during a mission. The special bloodline curse power completely lost its way after killing the enemy. Although it was suppressed and treated to a certain extent, at midnight, Cynthia would occasionally be awakened by the pain of the old wound. For this kind of injury, the best treatment institution among the people was the church. However, as a cultist, she had no chance. Cynthia herself knew that she might be able to hold on in her prime, but after 100 years, she was terminally ill. This old wound was very likely to be the cause of her death, just like the mercenaries in the group and her father. But today a sudden change changed her fate. In this unprecedented warmth and blessing, Paitila's voice rang in her ears. Previously, when Cynthia rejected his proposal, Luoya stared at her body. Naturally, it wasn't because he was lustful. In fact, he was observing her through Paitila's power. After infusing the power of the Earth Mother into her body, Luoya had completely completed his mission. Looking down at the woman who closed her eyes and trembled slightly, Luoya couldn't help but sigh. Before this, Luoya had informed him that the Iron Wall army was very resistant to the Church of Saint Maester. However, He didn't expect it to be to this extent. Now that external conditions couldn't affect them, only Pei-Tila could turn the situation around. At the end of the day, the reason why Luoya urgently needed an armed force was because it wasn't cost-effective for him to do it himself. Moreover, as the deputy lord, doing too much would damage his dignity and dignity. In fact, after reaching level 4 of source rank, Luoya's hands were itching. However, after careful consideration, he realized that no matter what kind of side effects he had, he would need the help of the girls to remove them. Even if he used the holy blade to heal himself, the Nuaire might still find out. If Luoya was discovered, he would be warned and the girls would cry and complain. Crying. This was what Luoya was most afraid of. Whether it was Ai Lizi or Xia Luot, he couldn't stand the sight of tears. As for the Nuaire, Miss Angel wouldn't cry. However, strictly speaking, she had the authority to confine Luoya. As for what would happen after he was imprisoned, thinking of this, the black-haired youth shuddered. He turned his head and looked at the woman beside him. As the spell power gradually decreased, Cynthia gradually opened her eyes. Seems like it was a good dream, Miss Cynthia. Lord Holy Sun, I apologize for my previous rudeness. Please forgive my ignorance. Holy Sun? Why is she calling me that again? When the black-haired youth heard Cynthia's words, it was as if he was dreaming of the small church during the Gemini War. However, after careful consideration, it seemed that the word holy was associated with the spokesperson of God. Seems like Pei-Tila has explained my situation clearly. Yes, the great existence has already sent down an oracle for me and bestowed me with his blessings. The brown-haired woman said and couldn't help but feel apologetic. Previously, she had doubted Luoya's character. She thought that as a great noble of the theocracy, he would definitely discriminate against heretics. However, after receiving the oracle, Cynthia was surprised to find that Luoya's purity was much higher than hers. If Luoya's position was placed in ancient times, in a heretical religion like the unyielding Perseverance sect, he would be the #1 person under God. In any sect, those who dared to go against the will of the high priest would be punished by God. It could be said that he was the standard embodiment of authority. In fact, the current Luoya should be able to do the same. However, this young master of the Akot family had never forced her to communicate with him. Even when he was rejected, he didn't get angry. Instead, he gave her his blessings. This made Cynthia very touched. Recalling Luoya's words, the woman's heart no longer doubted him. Instead, she couldn't help but feel a trace of hope. Although the Xia world was large, there were very few nobles who stood on the side of the heretics. Nobles like the Akot family who owned a territory with real power were even more unheard of. Luoya was the Holy Sun, so it was impossible for him to betray them. Cynthia and the others might really be able to follow him and get rid of their uncertain lives. If in the future, the theocracy's attitude towards the heretics changed like Luoya said, thinking until here, Cynthia's heart became excited. She slightly changed her squatting posture to kneeling on one knee. She covered her chest with one hand and lowered her head to the black-haired youth. Lord Holy Sun, I, Cynthia Ankit, represent the entire Iron Wall army. I'm willing to pledge my loyalty to you. Chapter 221. Cynthia's loyalty came too quickly, so fast that Luoya couldn't react in time. Obviously, the influence of the gods on the followers of the lower reaches was far beyond Luoya's imagination. Of course, part of it was also because of Luoya's reputation. It was a reasonable choice for the heretics to follow the Holy Sun because the Holy Sun could communicate with the gods and give them blessings. These benefits were real, not to mention that Luoya was also a powerful feudal lord. Although Sorophia had always treated the heretics well, they still believed in the 3 origin substances. In times of emergency, they could completely cut off their ties with mercenary groups like the Iron Wall Army. In this regard, Luoya was different. As the Holy Sun, he wouldn't abandon the unyielding church. He was truly one of them. Although Cynthia's decision was bold, it was well-founded. Luoya welcomed it and further formulated a plan. Although there was the blessing of Pei-Tila's extraordinary power, people still needed to eat. Material rewards were the most reliable source of motivation. Luoya, who had seen a lot of wolf culture in his previous life but didn't give overtime pay, was very clear about this. With a name, he also needed material rewards. Only then would he be able to exchange for the greatest loyalty. No one was a fool. The Iron Wall Army had been operating in Luote for more than 10 years. Whether it was their network, intelligence network, or station, they had invested a lot. They had even bought a lot of properties. It would be a pity to abandon them. At the very least, Luoya couldn't make Cynthia do such a thing. On the other hand, the Iron Wall Army had been serving as Xia Luote's bodyguards for many years, so he didn't want to change them. Ensuring the loyalty of Xia Luote's bodyguards was not an easy task. After so many years, he might as well continue with it. Otherwise, if something were to happen to Xia Luote, Luoya would regret it for the rest of his life. On the other hand, Luoya had incorporated the Iron Wall Army, which could be considered as having Luoya's men to protect Xia Luote, which could be said to be even more reassuring. Thus, after discussing with Cynthia, Luoya decided on a temporary plan. The Iron Wall Army would be temporarily divided into the Akart Territory headquarters and the Luo Chateau branch. The Luo Chateau branch would be as per normal, while the Akart Territory would give the soldiers a special mental allowance. Furthermore, the Akart Territory would be fully responsible for the accommodation, training facilities, and living areas. They would even be willing to provide assistance to their relatives. The current Iron Wall Army could be said to be Luoya's most important military force, even more so than the Akot family's own army, because this military force was his personal military force. What was a personal military force? Even if Luoya was not the lord of Akart Territory, Cynthia and the rest would still follow him because of his identity as the Holy Son. It was equivalent to being his personal army, which could be said to be the most reliable trump card. Cynthia was extremely moved by Luoya's investment in resources, and also confirmed her guess. Luoya really treated them as his own people. Feeling that she had found the leader of an organization, the young lady discussed with the youth for a few hours. Originally, Luoya wanted to invite her for lunch, but seeing Cynthia's heavy armor, he dismissed the idea. After all, the clothes under the armor were not very formal, and it would be impolite for a lady to take off her armor. While they were busy with the incorporation, time slowly passed, and the time for Nua Iyer and Ka Dia to leave was approaching. Seems like it's time to say goodbye again. How is it, can't bear to part with me? In the reception room of Celta Pavilion, the blonde girl gently took a sip of tea, and looked at the youth in front of her with nostalgia. After listening to Nua Iyer's words, Luoya looked away, and after thinking for a while he sighed. A little. Oh, I see. I feel that you have become more honest in recent years. I just want to use the time we have to meet effectively. After all, you are still very busy. Indeed, I have been too busy in the past 2 years. Her Royal Highness heard Luoya's words and felt a lot of emotions. She touched her cheeks and looked at the youth, and suddenly stood up after a while. Nua Iyer? Don't move. The girl's body moved closer to Luoya, and her body fragrance made the youth's brain a little dizzy. The blonde girl knelt on the chair and looked down at Luoya, and reached out her hand to touch his chest. Actually, I think that your sad expression when we parted was very cute, but the parting is a little painful for me. What a contradictory feeling. I say, do you know what I regret the most recently? What? I shouldn't have encouraged you that day. After listening to Nua Iyer's wonderful speech, the black-haired youth had a headache and covered his forehead. Miss Angel saw this and smiled. It can't be helped, your troubled expression is really cute, and it is still the same now. I have said before, don't seduce me like this. Chapter 222. On the first day away from Rose, he missed them. Inside the carriage, Luoya was lying on a soft bed, looking at the stars in the sky like a lonely old man. When they left Rose, Xia Luote specially modified a luxurious carriage for Luoya. The exquisite exterior decoration of the carriage was greatly simplified to fit the appearance of a caravan, but a lot of effort was put into the interior. The ceiling was also transformed into an adjustable skylight that allowed one to see the night sky. In addition to being afraid that Luoya would be bored, Miss Xia had other plans. For example, she hoped that the beautiful starry sky would remind Luoya of the night they spent together in the Warren Mountains, thus strengthening his longing for her. In fact, when Xia Luo saw Luoya send Ai Lizi away, she was relieved. But even so, Xia Luo could not stop Luoya from thinking about his sister, especially when he was traveling alone at night. Another function of the skylight was to divert Luoya's attention. However, it turned out that the effect was limited. It had to be said that although the days in Rose City were noisy, Luoya actually enjoyed it very much. After all, he ate well and lived well. When he was free, he could be Xia Luo's model and wear new clothes. Most importantly, Nua Iyer and Kadia, who were rarely seen, had returned. Although the atmosphere when everyone gathered together was not very harmonious, it was good for Luoya. It was always difficult to part after meeting, let alone leaving the noisy city and coming to the wilderness. At this time, it had been a few hours since they left Rose City. Under the cover of the night, Luoya and the others traveled all the way until midnight. According to the habits of caravans, no matter how hurried they were, they should rest at midnight. After all, the wilderness late at night was too dangerous. Not only was it good for bandits, many nocturnal monsters would also start to move during this time. Mr. Luoya, who disguised himself as a merchant, naturally did not want to cause more trouble. The caravan stopped at a shelter by the official road to rest. Luoya looked at the cloaked figure outside the carriage door, and could not help but speak. "Cynthia, you don't have to stay here. There shouldn't be any danger tonight." "But my lord." "It doesn't matter. The public security on the Rosetta Road is pretty good, and it's not far from the city. Don't forget, I'm not completely helpless." "I see. I've offended you, Lord Holy Sun." The brown-haired woman nodded slightly upon hearing Luoya's words. She couldn't help but feel grateful and respectful. When the Iron Wall army learned that Luoya was the Holy Sun who was protected by the gods, their first reaction was actually suspicion. But after more than 10 high-level representatives met Luoya under the leadership of Cynthia, this suspicion disappeared. Luoya did not let Paitila bless them. After all, blessings were like rewards. Luoya chose to show his strength in a crowded place. So in the courtyard of the 100 Birds Hall, the Hydra staff used Body of Rebirth, for the first time in Luoya's peak state. Together with Paitila's power, it turned into a 10-meter-long rock python. Facing the god's body that emitted golden light and pressure, the high-level members of the Iron Wall army almost did not dare to look directly at it. They could only crawl down and kowtow. According to Paitila, this seemed to be a normal phenomenon. Only Cynthia, who was the highest source level, could barely withstand this pressure. "Wait, what about me? How can you be the same as them?" Paitila's words carried a motherly love, which made Luoya blush a little. He felt helpless. Luoya was only the Holy Sun in name, but Paitila really wanted to be his mother. After a short oracle, Paitila disappeared. The mercenaries also changed the object of their kowtow to Luoya. This made the black-haired youth feel awkward. He hurriedly asked Cynthia to stop them. It must be known that the high-level members of the Iron Wall army, except for the genius Cynthia, were all old people in their 70s or 80s. No one could stand the sight of them lining up in a row to kowtow. Luoya looked at this scene and felt that his lifespan was decreasing. So after some comforting, the old people finally calmed down a little. But when they heard that Luoya was going to take them back to Akat Hill, they began to cry with gratitude. It could not be helped. The pagans who had been wandering for a long time really longed for a stable place to belong. This was a feeling that non-pagans in this era could not understand. First, they knelt together, then they cried together. This scene changed so quickly that the only two young people present, Luoya and Cynthia, had a headache. Luoya was fine, but Cynthia, as the leader, was flustered. Fortunately, the black-haired youth saw that the situation was not good and changed the topic. He mentioned that they needed guards for this trip. "If you say this, I won't cry anymore." When the old people heard this news, they were excited, and then they enthusiastically signed up. The 10 old men who were still crying a second ago were fighting for a place in their team. Some said that their beliefs were firm, some said that their equipment was good, and some said that there were more young people in the team. For a while they were fighting fiercely. Everything would be different the first time. It was the same for the first guard mission. Because people were lazy, it was normal for the team that they were used to not like to change. In other words, if this mission was done well, the whole team might be directly transferred to the personal army. This was a great honor. The old men naturally knew this truth, so they fought with each other until their faces turned red. Everyone wanted to fight for a chance to be close to Luoya for their warriors. After all, they had seen Cynthia's example. Ever since she received the blessing and recovered from her old injuries, Cynthia's spirit and complexion had improved a lot. Furthermore, according to her, the speed of her curse had also increased. This meant that her mutation speed would be faster. According to Cynthia's age, there was even hope for her to break through again in the future. Such a large bonus made people jealous, but the gap between the Iron Wall Army's teams was not very big. For a time, it was difficult to determine who was better. In the end, Luoya could not stand it anymore, and simply ordered the teams to be mixed according to the quota. Only then did the Iron Wall Army's thousands of people form an elite team of 30 people. In the team of 30 people, there was 1 source level 3, 20 source level 4, and 9 source level 5. The source level 5 people basically had special bloodline curses or skills, for example, the cooks. That's right, this team. Even the cooks were source level 5. If they were placed in the regular army, they would be considered as the captain. This team could no longer be described as being able to fight. Luoya estimated that even her father's personal army was not this fierce. From this point, it could be seen that the unyielding Perseverance Church had some skills. Chapter 223. Next to the bonfire under the moonlight, the brown-haired woman wiped the long sword in her hand and looked in the direction of Luoya's carriage with vigilance. In the entire camp, 5 night watchers were in different directions, and the curse vessel had been activated. Of course, in order not to disturb the Son of God, Cynthia did not include Luoya's carriage in the scope of the curse vessel, but it should be enough. In theory, all of Shiya's curses needed a medium to carry them. These mediums could be water, fire, or earth. Even the most illusory curse needed to be transported by curse power. The only thing that could barely escape this theory was the rare space curse, but the distance was the biggest limitation. As for Luoya's carriage, it was impossible to invade with space curse. Sorophia had produced the gemstone necklace fleet, so they were very familiar with space curse. Luoya's carriage itself was set up with a barrier. Not to mention others, even Xia Luo's space bomb couldn't jump in. Therefore, after confirming that there was no abnormality on the ground and in the sky, as long as Cynthia guarded the door, Luoya should be safe. At least, that was what the serious and responsible captain thought. However, she didn't know that some extremely special bloodlines could use natural phenomena that were not caused by the person as a medium. For example, moonlight. Inside the carriage, the silver-haired girl gently stretched out her fingertips, and a faint light began to spread and floated in the carriage. The sleeping curse was like a lullaby, making the boy sleep deeper. After confirming that everything was going smoothly, AI Lizzie was completely relieved. Now Luoya's parking location was not far from Rosetta City, but it was also very close to Akat Hill. AI Lizzie had to follow for a few more days before showing up to avoid being sent back by her brother. Since Luoya coughed up blood because of AI Lizzie's anger, the girl was very afraid of Luoya's anger. However, as a sister who grew up with Luoya, AI Lizzie knew Luoya too well. As long as the journey was far, her brother would definitely not let her go home, and would definitely take her with him. As long as it was an established fact, what was done could not be undone. With Luoya's spoiling of her, the boy could only sleep with her in the end. AI Lizzie was very clear about this matter. Brother is really cute when he's asleep. Thinking so, AI Lizzie's cheeks gradually began to redden. Luoya usually had to maintain his dignity as the acting lord, so that people would not subconsciously look down on him due to his age. But when he was sleeping, the completely relaxed boy's cheeks would soften a lot. This was also one of the reasons why AI Lizzie secretly came to see Luoya at night. Feeling the warm breath, AI Lizzie felt that her emotions were gradually getting out of control. Under the moonlight, the girl leaned down and kissed the boy lightly, but this was not enough to satisfy her. AI Lizzie's curses were actually similar to sleeping pills. It could cause people to enter a deep sleep, but sleeping did not mean that they would not be woken up. Overly intense movements could also cause them to wake up, so the girl's kisses could only wander around the lips and not go deeper. AI Lizzie's eyes were in a daze, but at least she knew that she could not expose herself, so she could only kiss from the lips all the way to the neck. But this not only did not relieve the burning in her body, but it also made the heat even more intense. AI Lizzie moaned and could not help but want to do something else. But at the crucial moment, Luo Ye's unconscious groan gave her a fright. AI Lizzie heard Luo Ye's groan, and immediately straightened her body. But the black-haired boy only adjusted his posture and fell silent again. The girl who had a false alarm heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, her mind became much clearer. She panted heavily to calm her breathing and reached out to touch her abdomen. After thinking for a moment, she shook her head slightly. No, it's still too early. The baby won't be born. As the young girl muttered to herself, she bit her lower lip, unwilling to give up. In Xia, the physiological education of the nobles was relatively complete. In order to prevent children who did not know how to behave, the young ladies would be forced to attend physiological classes after their first menstrual period, and the consequences of tasting the forbidden fruit too early would be clearly explained. AI Lizzie listened to Anna's classes and heard about the risks and dangers of premature birth due to the immature pelvic bones. Only then did she suppress her restless heart. It had to be said that Anna's classes were very pertinent. In this aspect, no matter how much the maids supported their young mistress, they did not dare to joke about it. In fact, the highest mortality rate for noble ladies was childbirth. Even low-level extraordinaires could have accidents. Of course, because of her bloodline, AI Lizzie did not need to worry at all in this aspect. She was immortal under the moon, and could even skip the problem of her pelvic bones and undergo a cesarean section. But there was another problem, and that was that such an unnatural child would not be able to receive Xia's blessing. This was a major disadvantage among the nobles. AI Lizzie naturally did not want the child of her and Luo Ye's love to suffer such grievances, so she could only grit her teeth and wait until she reached adulthood. Thinking of this, the silver-haired girl calmed down a lot. She looked around and shook her head awkwardly. Without a doubt, AI Lizzie was also dissatisfied with the environment here for her first time. Although the carriage prepared by Sorophia had a different kind of excitement, it made AI Lizzie feel that it was very informal, and she had the illusion that she was a third party. If she really wanted to be intimate with her dear elder brother, it would have to be at Akat's house, their love nest in the mansion. It would not be good to be in the wilderness. AI Lizzie dismissed the idea and lay down gently beside the boy. She looked at Luo Ye's cheek and closed her eyes. Let's leave it at that for tonight. The next morning, Luo Ye's carriage set off at dawn. The boy, who had not woken up so early in a long time, was surprised to find that he was in good spirits. After thinking for a while, Luo Ye could only attribute it to the good quality of sleep last night. Although they were in the wilderness, the natural scenery did seem to be good for sleeping. But for some reason, Luo Ye's lips felt a little awkward. What's the matter? Can camping in the wilderness hurt one's lips? Luo Ye was a little confused about this matter, but she soon forgot about it. After all, it was just a small matter. Perhaps she just bumped her teeth when she turned over at night. Otherwise, there was no other explanation. Chapter 224. St. Freya Academy was an academic institution with hundreds of years of history. It was also the core area of the entire country of scholars, Bucharest. The word Freya originated from Freya in the ancient Austinian language. Freya was the god of knowledge and truth. He had a wide range of beliefs in ancient Austinian. Legend had it that one of the three major source substances of mankind, wisdom, originated from him. In the Second Era, there was even a statue of this god at the entrance of the academy. At that time, Freya was said to be a dignified man. But just like in Luo Ye's previous life, Guanyin Bodhisattva changed from a man to a woman in the process of spreading religion. A god that no one had ever seen before was also a problem in Xia, a world where information transmission was underdeveloped. Especially from the end of the Second Era to the beginning of the Third Era, too much culture was lost, and a lot of content was changed. On the other hand, whether or not gods had a gender had also caused a great deal of discussion in the academic community in the early Third Era. Although this question was useless from Luoya's point of view, it was very important for many believers of that era. So after a long period of tearing each other apart, the old man Freya was swept into the trash heap of history and turned into Freya, the goddess of knowledge and truth. At least, this was what the country of scholars thought. Luoya seriously suspected that this group of scholars had been single for too long, and did not want to see a man even when they were worshipping a god. But he had to admit that the country of scholars had put in a lot of effort to build this academy that had the name of the god of knowledge and truth as its signboard. St. Freya Academy was the best choice for the nobles in Xia to graduate from. It was also the top of the entire academy's chain of contempt. It could be said to overlook the world. To some extent, it was similar to the Tokyo University of Japan in Luoya's previous life. Almost all the upper-class nobles graduated from this academy, such as Luoya's father, Ka Dia. As a place where talents gathered, St. Freya Academy was also the initial stage for Recorder's Eye. To this day, Luoya's flag-raising journey could be said to be quite successful. Akate territory was thriving under his leadership. Ai Lizi Nuair and Xia Luot were all raised by him one after another. Especially Xia Luot. It could be said that it was completely unexpected. Luoya originally just wanted to raise some favorability, but in the end, it unexpectedly progressed to this extent. Now that 3 of the 4 heroines were gone, the lineup that besieged Luoya to death in the game could be said to have completely collapsed. However, Luoya had to admit that he was not completely at ease. If Nuair was the one with the strongest attack power among the heroines, Ai Lizi was the one with the strongest performance in that plot, Xia Luot was the one with the least impact, and she was the one who supported Luoya. Then the last heroine, Lillian Aikman, was the most troublesome one. Yes, the current princess of the Austin Empire was the last person who besieged Luoya to death in Recorder's Eye. Luoya didn't know much about this person, even less than Xia Luot. However, there was one thing that firmly attracted the attention of all the players at that time, and that was her identity. Lillian Aikman was nominally the elder sister of Paul Aikman, who was an illegitimate child. The two were directly related by blood. Normally, this kind of character could not be used as a heroine. After all, if it was true, then it would be a German orthopedic plot, but it did not seem to be the case. These two people were actually not of the same bloodline, and the problem should be with Paul. It was obvious that as the daughter of the Austin Empire's emperor, Lillian's identity could not be faked. After all, it was too difficult to be the Green Empire's emperor Lucas Aikman. The Austin people were not idiots. As a big country with the abnormal ideology of the pureblood faction, they had always valued bloodline. It was impossible for them to let this happen. In fact, when the prince and princess were born, it was necessary to walk in front of the curse vessel that could detect the bloodline. After growing up, there were also many treasures that needed to be activated by the royal bloodline. Lillian had lived in the Austin Empire for more than 10 years, so there was no possibility of faking it. If it was possible, it could only be Paul who was suddenly found among the people. He had only stayed in the Austin Empire for a short time before he was sent to the academy in Bologna, the country of scholars. Only his experience could avoid the layers of screening. But if Paul was a fake Austin royal bloodline, there was something wrong with the plot. So for Luoya, who basically only remembered the common plot, this matter was a bit confusing. Many hidden secrets were probably only revealed in the Lillian plot, but these were not important to him. What he cared about was another point. That was Lillian Aikman. For some reason, she was very hostile to Luoya in the plot, not after Luoya revealed his identity as a cultist, but at the beginning. For this reason, Luoya was still very confused. He could only attribute it to Lillian's innate intelligence. She keenly discovered Luoya's abnormality in the plot and had doubts but no evidence, so she took countermeasures. From this point of view, Luoya's current situation was still very optimistic. After all, joining a cultist was already impossible for Luoya, who had awakened his bloodline. So, isn't the situation looking good for us? After thinking for a long time, Luoya blinked and suddenly felt that his future seemed to be bright. In this case, it would be fine even if he didn't pull out Lillian's flag. Thinking about it, how could there be so many people who were prejudiced against him? After all, Xia Luo's situation was in the minority, and the probability was so small that it could be ignored. The Austin Empire where Lillian was from was thousands of miles away from him, so how could it have anything to do with him? Sigh, I'm overthinking it. The black-haired young man thought so and heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled at his beautiful future. As expected of me, I've completed all my goals before entering the academy. Thinking so, Luoya stood up, picked up the teacup on the table, and elegantly and calmly took a sip of tea. Although his side's victory was already certain, he still had to be careful with his own life. Besides, the academy wasn't just a matter of Luoya's fate. There were more realistic situations such as finding the scholar. After confirming his goal, Luoya put down the teacup and looked out the window at the mercenaries who were in a strict formation. Then, he looked at the empty carriage that didn't even have a maid. For a moment he couldn't get used to it. Is this a solo trip? Life is as lonely as snow. As the young man said so, he reached out and rubbed his still awkward lips. Chapter 225. It had been 3 days since he left Luosai City, and Luoya felt that there was something wrong with his journey. Why is my mouth a little swollen? Looking at his bright red lips in the mirror, Luoya's head was full of question marks, and his eyes revealed a deep sense of confusion. Although before the start of this journey, Luoya had thought about the possibility of diseases such as acclimatization, he had to admit that the current situation was a little beyond his understanding. Swollen mouth. What kind of disease could this be? Could it be that eating too much roasted meat made him heaty? No, it didn't happen before. After all, how could an extraordinaire's body be so weak? Luoya couldn't figure out what was wrong with himself, so he could only call Cynthia over and ask if this was a common disease during the journey. Cynthia looked at him, and her expression was a little awkward. My lord, your mouth seems to be a little swollen. Cynthia carefully observed for a long time and said so. Luoya couldn't help but be a little speechless. He could only hold his chin and look at the ground, thinking about the reason. However, it was this action that made the young man's dilated pupils suddenly focus, and he stared at the ground like needles. This time, when Sorophia modified the carriage, she took into account the possibility of a battle, so the interior of the carriage didn't use a soft carpet that could make one unstable. Instead, she used a special floor that could increase one's grip on the ground. Because of this, some things that normally wouldn't be left behind on the carriage were clearly visible, such as footprints. The black-haired young man stared at the faint footprints on the ground, and his expression gradually became unsightly. It wasn't that no one entered Luoya's carriage, or rather, it was to report to him about the daily itinerary and route. Cynthia and the others entered many times, but Luoya could be sure that these footprints didn't belong to any of the guards, because the footprints were too small, and it even made him suspect that they belonged to a child. A child, in the middle of the night when he was asleep, entered his carriage surrounded by guards? Thinking of this possibility, Luoya's hair stood on end. Although ghosts did exist in Shiya's world, and there were many ways to get rid of them, the horror of someone staring at him at night still made him feel very uncomfortable. On the other hand, the thing that could leave behind footprints was probably not a ghost, but something more advanced. The most common legend was that there were banshees in the forest that sucked the lives of travelers, but these records were from hundreds of years ago. Luoya didn't believe that he could encounter such a thing like winning the lottery, but even if it was a human, the nature of this matter was very serious. The carriage of the Akot family's heir wasn't a public transport. Not everyone could get on it. After thinking for a while, the black-haired young man calmed down and called out to Cynthia with his usual tone. Cynthia, give me the map. Yes, sir. The brown-haired woman took the map and entered the carriage, but what she saw was Luoya's serious face. The young man gently pointed to the ground, and Cynthia's face immediately turned gloomy. Half an hour later, the young lady walked out of the carriage and continued to move forward without saying a word, as if nothing had happened. Luoya was also as usual, and even took an afternoon nap. In the evening, the convoy stopped by the roadside again. After a little hunting to replenish their rations, the convoy had dinner. Luoya, who seemed to be in a good mood, even sang a song with his subordinates. After that, the black-haired young man returned to the carriage to sleep at about the same time as a few days ago. Time passed little by little, and when the silver moon hung high in the sky at midnight, Luoya's sleeping carriage lit up with a faint silver light, and a slender figure appeared as expected. The next moment, the young man exploded, and the sound of fighting filled the air. Half an hour later in the carriage, Luoya sat at the table and stared expressionlessly at the seductress, who broke into his carriage. On the bed opposite, the pitiful young lady was sitting like a duck facing her elder brother, blushing and lowering her head without saying a word. It has to be said that Luoya and Cynthia's plan to lure the enemy was very successful. At midnight, Ai Lizzie, who was in a good mood after hearing Luoya's song, appeared without any warning. However, what welcomed her was a huge bone claw and surrounded from all sides. The moment he saw Ai Lizzie's face, Luoya's actions stopped reflexively, but it was too late to stop his subordinates outside the carriage. As the leader of the Iron Wall mercenaries, Cynthia placed great importance on this journey of escorting her family's saint. She never thought that even with all her precautions, there would still be a problem. In order to make up for her mistake, Cynthia rushed in fiercely, and almost at the same time when Luoya stopped, she broke in with her men. Then, it was the public execution. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the silver-haired young lady was frozen in her position of taking off her shoes and climbing onto her elder brother's bed. The black-haired young man was also stunned, and the same went for Cynthia. The leader of the mercenaries had escorted Xia Luo before, so naturally she had seen the eldest daughter of the Akat family. However, while Luoya and Cynthia had seen each other before, the rest of the mercenaries did not recognize her. Chapter 226. Under the moonlight, Cynthia looked at the nearby guards and used her eyes to signal them not to make any noise. And in the carriage in the middle of the crowd, the silver-haired girl was silent under Luoya's gaze. Luoya had seen a lot of night raids in movies in his previous life. As one of the sources of joy, the young man was quite happy to see it. Of course, that was if it didn't happen to him. But in Shiya, this was the first time Luoya heard of such a thing. The reason was none other than their identity. Luoya was the only son of the Akat family. Every day, there would be someone on duty outside the room where he slept. There were also maids at the door waiting to be summoned. Physically speaking, a night raid was impossible. Moreover, the girls that Luoya saw were not ordinary. If they weren't the daughters of famous families, then they were the daughters of noble families. Nobles were very particular about elegance. Even in ancient times, nobles had a fixed size in their bedrooms because they had to maintain their elegance at all times. Although this kind of absurd behavior had been eliminated in this era, nobles still had to be reserved. A night raid was simply inconceivable, not to mention a woman attacking a man in the middle of the night. Moreover, they were siblings. Without a doubt, if this matter were to spread, it would be a huge blow to Ai Lizzie's reputation. This was also something that Luoya had a headache, but also something to be thankful about. Fortunately, the guards this time were from the unyielding Perseverance sect. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Tell me, what do you think? Because I don't want to be separated from Big Brother, so? As soon as Luoya's question came out, the silver-haired girl's face immediately fell, and she pitifully bit her lips. But Anna is handling the Akat family's matters very well. I can't do anything at home, so I might as well accompany Big Brother. Accompany me? Is accompanying me the same as sneaking into the carriage in the middle of the night? Do you know what people will think if they see this? Under the angry questioning of the black-haired youth, Ai Lizzie's eyes became wet, and she began to sob uncontrollably. Ever since they were young, Luoya had always doted on Ai Lizzie, and the number of times he had reprimanded her could be counted on one hand. Now that he was really angry, the young girl was almost defenseless and immediately burst into tears. Looking at this AI Lizzie, Luoya felt a headache coming on. He had no choice but to swallow his words. He sighed and softened his tone. Sigh, do you know that if this matter gets out, you won't be able to get married in the future? Sob, I'm sorry, AI Lizzie, who wanted to apologize out of reflex, was stunned. She suddenly stopped crying and blinked her eyes. Not being able to get married. Was there such a good thing? AI Lizzie stared blankly for a moment like a blind monk who had discovered a dot. Luoya, who had discovered that the girl's power had suddenly been cut off, was also puzzled. AI Lizzie? Sob, I'm sorry. The girl hurriedly continued to cry and apologize under Luoya's strange gaze. But the eyes behind her hands lit up. Big brother, sob. Will AI Lizzie really not be able to get married if I do this? This depends on the situation. The guards this time are my people, so they shouldn't be able to spread the news. Sob, if AI Lizzie can't get married, will Big Brother take responsibility? What are you saying? If you can't get married, then so be it. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. Hearing the silver-haired girl's sobbing pleas, Luoya immediately patted his chest. However, the youth didn't know that AI Lizzie's breathing suddenly sped up when she heard this, as if she had grasped the marriage code. So that's how it is. In other words, as long as this matter gets out, or the night attack in the future gets out. AI Lizzie's eyes flickered as she maintained her crying appearance. Seeing this, Luoya didn't feel that anything was wrong, so he didn't reprimand her anymore. When it came to education, it was enough for the child to admit her mistakes from the bottom of her heart. Endlessly reprimanding to vent one's emotions would be as bad as not doing enough. Moreover, Luoya's identity could only be considered as half apparent. After understanding all this, the black-haired youth changed the topic and carefully asked about AI Lizzie's life over the past few days. In the end, he realized that the silver-haired girl wasn't that ridiculous. In fact, AI Lizzie was in a hurry to leave the city not only to hide from Luoya, but also to speed up and catch up to Kadia. The girl actually obtained permission from Luoya's father, but what the guards in Kadia didn't know was that AI Lizzie, who had found Luoya, didn't actually show herself, but followed him all the way to the middle of the night to steal food. Chapter 227. Half a month later, on the official road of the Austin Empire's town of Baudry, a caravan entered the town in an orderly fashion. It was a caravan of around 30 people in several carriages. There were no family emblems on the carriages, but they had the common symbol of Loche's side. This meant that the caravan didn't belong to a noble family, but was under the banner of one of Loche's many merchant guilds. Without a noble background, they naturally wouldn't alarm any local nobles, but for a remote mountain village like Baudry, the arrival of a caravan was something new, and attracted the attention of the townspeople. It had to be said that this time's gathering was very rewarding. For example, they saw a pair of beautiful children who looked like they'd walked out of a painting. They were a black-haired youth and a silver-haired girl in the middle carriage of the caravan. The two of them were in the same carriage, and seemed to be a young fiancé. If you asked why they were husband and wife, the first reason was naturally because they were in the same carriage. The second reason was that although the two of them were very beautiful, the color of their hair and eyes was too different. As for the third reason, it was that the two of them were very affectionate. Every time they appeared, the black-haired youth and the silver-haired girl would stick together, either hugging or holding hands. The expression on the youth's face was fine, while the girl had a happy smile. The married women of the town were all too familiar with this expression. They were completely immersed in love, so all kinds of guesses arose. Among them, the rumor that the young master of a merchant guild had brought his fiancée on a pre-wedding trip was the most colorful. Luoya didn't know about these things, and was used to AI Lizzie hugging since childhood. Even if he knew that he was being misunderstood, he couldn't be bothered to explain. Even if he knew that AI Lizzie was always acting intimately in front of outsiders. All of Elise's mistakes can be forgiven. This is Rojas' theorem, and so far it hasn't been broken. The boy's love for the silver-haired girl is real. Even if she made a mistake, it's still the same. Luoyu attributed the girl's muddle-headed night attack at the beginning of the journey as a prank. Cynthia and the others didn't dare to raise any objections, but there was no doubt that those who had seen AI Lizzie crawl into bed didn't believe it. Faced with this situation, Luoyu had no choice but to strictly order everyone not to spread the news. However, AI Lizzie, who wanted the whole world to know about the night attack, so that she wouldn't be able to get married, was very dissatisfied with this order. She could only reveal to Cynthia and the others that the two of them were actually foster siblings. When Cynthia found out that Luoyu was not related to AI Lizzie by blood, she heaved a sigh of relief. She was glad that her holy son did not violate ethics, and was an ordinary person with common sense. But then, the way she looked at AI Lizzie changed. That was the way he looked at his mistress. After all, from Cynthia's point of view, the two of them had already shared the same bed. Wasn't their future marriage already set in stone? However, what she didn't know was that Luoyu's bed was comparable to the city walls of Russia during the 100 Years' War. As the saying went, the flag on the city wall changed. AI Lizzie's army only had the upper hand for a while, but this didn't hinder Cynthia and AI Lizzie's relationship by leaps and bounds. After finding out that the two of them weren't related by blood, the Perseverance Church also chose to side with the siblings during their daily public displays of affection. The Holy Son and Miss AI Lizzie's relationship today was also very good. Cynthia ordered her subordinates to carry the wine while looking in the direction of the carriage with a warm smile. On the carriage, Luoyu was currently staring at the cup in his hand and swirling it around. After entering the town, Luoyu ordered his subordinates to collect the scattered cade wine in the shops, and even the houses of the residents. As for himself, he directly went to the town's best tavern to buy a cup. Regarding this wine that had a history of more than 1,000 years, Luoyu, as a historian, was actually quite interested in it. It had to be said that it was really cheap. 2 copper coins for a cup, and there was also a piece of sweet lime in it. According to the tavern owner, it was too bitter and some people couldn't drink it if they didn't put it in. Luoyu heard this and tasted it on the spot, but he almost spat it out. Due to the brewing process, the alcohol content of cade wine wasn't high. Perhaps it was because of the mushrooms, but it had a valiant and numbing taste. However, the taste was really bad. Bitter, it was quite bitter, and there was a faint smell of the earth. Compared to the specialty wine of Akat Hill, it was completely opposite. Because it was too disgusting, Luoyu didn't bring a cup for AI Lizzie. When he returned, the girl's reaction after tasting it proved that Luoyu's behavior was correct. It was obvious that the local specialty didn't satisfy Luoyu, but for Luoyu, who had personally come to the Austin Empire for the first time, there was more to observe. As a lord, it was necessary to visit foreign cities and learn from advanced experiences. After a series of observations, Luoyu discovered that the Austin Empire wasn't as rich and powerful as he imagined. At the very least, the construction of the mountain towns was very poor, and even fell behind the southern mountains of Akat Hill that Luoyu had ruled for a few years. Moreover, the residents' sense of belonging to the Austin Empire was also very poor. The term pureblood faction didn't have any roots here, so the inexplicable sense of superiority naturally didn't exist. This made Luoyu feel very comfortable. Thinking about it, when one didn't even have enough food and clothing, who would care about the bloodline of the kingdom? It was just a bubble when one fainted from hunger. After a day of observation, Luoyu once again confirmed the core idea of Akat Hill's economic development as the core. After selling some daily necessities, replenishing food, and collecting more than 20 barrels of cade wine, Luoyu's group also completed their mission here. After a rare night of rest in the hotel, they embarked on the journey to Sharon Forest early the next morning. In the forest, a middle-aged man with brown hair and a gray-haired old man were moving forward in a chaotic forest. The middle-aged man was called Rodney, and the old man was called Wood. Both of them were village chiefs and part-time leaders of the pagan power sect. As the village chief and the leader of a sect, they undoubtedly had a good status. But now their appearance could only be described as embarrassing. Rodney was still young compared to Wood. He had strong firepower when he fought, so the clothes on his body were particularly tattered. The stick could be used as a mop. The gray-haired old man's situation was better. His body was wrapped in a wolfskin jacket, but most of the fur had fallen off. When the wind blew, it didn't move, so it was bald like a leather jacket. Obviously, the two people's dressing was very unsuitable for their identity. As for why, it was a long story. Since the village of the power sect had been targeted by the cultists because of the scale of the snake god. It had been 3 years. In 3 years, Rodney and others had moved home twice. They were forced to cross the mountains and escape to the Sharon forest where people rarely went. At the same time, the whole village activated spirit vision to look for clues about the god and the son of God. Chapter 228. Early in the morning, the sun rose. Sharon Forest, which was slightly dark due to the cover of the leaves, had a new day of recovery. Diurnal animals began to come out of their nests, and the chirping of birds echoed in the forest. However, in this refreshing weather, a team of about 100 people silently walked through the forest. They were dressed in simple clothes, and many of them didn't even have shoes. The leaders were a middle-aged man with dark brown hair and a gray-haired old man. They were Rodney and Wood. At this moment, the two of them were holding weapons and looking for a good position in the forest to ambush the villagers who were hiding on both sides of the road. That's right, today the two village chiefs, the leader of the power sect, and an expert of source level 3 would turn into robbers and play the game of, I opened this mountain and planted this tree. Regarding this point, the two people who had never robbed in their lives felt very embarrassed, but they couldn't do anything about it because this was the request of the Lord of the Forest. This was the first time Rodney and Wood, who had lived here for more than 2 years, heard of the request of the Lord of the Forest. After all, as a Tyrant who had survived from ancient times, Cade didn't have most of the needs of humans. What in the world made the Sage of the Forest ask for help from them? Could it be that there was a big crisis here? The two people who thought so had a serious attitude, but after hearing Cade's words, their expressions became strange. I heard the news from my companions from afar. A team has brought a lot of wine here, and it's my favorite cuddy wine. Oh, that eternal delicacy. I haven't had it for almost 100 years. That night, Rodney and Wood looked at each other and listened to the tall ant sigh for an hour. The content of the sigh was no different from that of an old drunkard's father who had been banned from drinking by his children. The so-called request was to rob the passing carriages of alcohol. When they heard this request, the two of them were in despair, but they also let out a sigh of relief. To be honest, although Rodney and the others were grateful to the Lord of the Forest for taking them in, the power sect couldn't accept a mission that was too hard. After all, everyone's condition wasn't too good. If Cade, the ancient tree sage who could command the werewolves, couldn't solve the problem, they would naturally have to pay a big price. If that was the case, the two of them would have to decline even if they had to bear the reputation of being ungrateful. However, it was different now. Isn't it shameful to rob others? This was undoubtedly shameful, especially for a level 3 origin ranker. He was practically a beggar, but he had to admit that it was very safe. The battle between the bandits and the Chamber of Commerce's convoy could be said to be a common occurrence in an area with poor security. However, no matter which side was involved in the battle, their strength was very low, and most of them didn't even have any origin substances. Who would be willing to be a caravan guard or a bandit if they were able to reach source rank 5? Wasn't the position of a captain in the army better? Of course, there were also some wanted extraordinaires who ended up as bandits. However, even if it was a bandit group that spanned across several noble families' territories, the leader would at most be a level 4 source rank extraordinaire. It was impossible for them to be a high-level extraordinaire. There was no other reason for this. It was because once a high-level superhuman appeared, the nature of the group would change. Every country would change the definition of a group at this level to that of a rebel army, and they would immediately send out troops to wipe them out. This was because they were a threat to national security. Because of this, the upper limit of a bandit was only level 4 source rank. Naturally, the weapons used to deal with the bandits were also limited to level 4 source rank. Isn't this risk-free? It was just a caravan transporting wine. Wouldn't it be easy for either of them to capture it? Rodney and Wood, who had been thinking for a long time, looked at each other. A relaxed smile appeared on their faces, and they patted their chests and accepted this matter. Isn't it just wine? We understand. Rob, we can rob. Anyway, this mountain was originally yours. Just treat it as a toll. The two level 3 source rank old foxes immediately agreed to this request. In their opinion, this was a small matter not worth mentioning. However, if they completed it, they would be able to leave with peace of mind. After relaxing, the two returned to the village and immediately began to make arrangements. The information from the trees couldn't describe the scale of the humans, so Rodney and the others didn't know how many guards the caravan had. To be on the safe side, they brought a lot of people this morning. The process of the ambush was relatively rough. Due to the lack of bows and arrows, the people of the power sect didn't occupy any commanding heights. The plan of Wood and the others was to force them to surrender. It was best not to hurt them. They would just rob the wine and leave to avoid trouble. After hearing that it was unlikely that they would fight, and that the things they robbed were only transported by a small caravan, the warriors of the power sect were even less nervous. Their camouflage was basically just hanging 3 or 2 branches on their bodies. It was only at noon that they covered themselves with weeds because the sun was too bright. In this situation where the ambush didn't look like an ambush, and a nap didn't look like a nap, a small caravan of about 30 people came along the mountain road. However, what made Rodney and Wood a little strange was that before they entered the encirclement, the whole caravan suddenly stopped. What's going on? Could it be that they were exposed? The middle-aged man and the old man looked at each other. They knew that the ambush of the power sect was not professional enough. However, ordinary people shouldn't be able to discover it because Wood had specifically used an illusion spell. To see through this spell from such a distance, one would need to be at least level 3 source rank. Can there be a level 3 source rank expert in this team? How is it possible? It's a coincidence that you're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.